but it's better to refrain from it. That's what I do, trying to not use the word God, as something casual or use it in a joke. I don't like that. We have to revere him, and even the word that refers to him. So yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
think,
Mashallah,
brother.
we worship a
okay.
very merciful God, and it does not, it does not burden any soul beyond its means. And it says, I've on chapter 17:36, it says, I've given you the eyes, the hearing, right, and the brain, and you're responsible for using those things. So if we come across a situation like you travel to Iran or some of those God-forsaken places, where they don't understand human rights, and they're asking you, do you believe in God? Or something like that. Or no, do you believe in Muhammad or something, those kind of questions?
Mm.
You better say yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up in the gallows.
Yeah.
So God says, when you find your life is in danger, it's okay. He knows
Yes.
everybody's innermost thoughts. Praise God.
That's great. Yeah, we actually were talking about this a few weeks ago. I think it was another Quran study that we are allowed to lie under extreme scenarios. Like, let's say your life would be in danger, your family would be in danger. That they tell you, "Oh, you believe in God, you believe in the Quran, so we're going to persecute you or kill you." So in that case, you can say, "Okay, no, I don't, I don't believe it." Obviously, you believe in the bottom of your heart, but that's just what you say to get out of that situation. That's completely fine. No problem with it. Yeah, mashallah.
So,
Um,
Brother, I
have you
just
answered my
wanted to
question?
add the white lie
yeah,
Aha,
question of
exactly.
Brother Abraham.
Yes.
Yeah, we cannot give white lies.
Okay.
And actually, is a sermon, I think, from Dr. Khalifa that actually points this out, that do not lie. And he says, don't do it. In other way, don't cheat yourself. Don't lie. Not even white lie. Thank you.
mashallah.
But,
You can
but
kind
can
of,
you expand on this verse, please? I need more explanation. Go ahead, brother, please. Go ahead.
yeah. I remember like one thing I said maybe could be used like this. I remember we were going camping with school, and we were supposed to be sleeping at late at night. And then I was not sleeping, and one of the teachers came and caught me red-handed. I was talking with my friends. So I and said, "Oh, you were talking, you were not sleeping." No, I said, just something very came out of my mouth. So no, I swear to God, I didn't. I was sleeping. So I think that something like that is something very casual, or you didn't mean it. You're not held responsible for it. But it's when you actually swear by God or make an oath that you have to, basically uphold it. And if you don't, then you have to pay the price. So that could be maybe one example of, it's just like a mere utterance of an oath, for example.
Okay, okay. Like bearing false witness when you say something and you know it was not true, and you swore by God that this thing
Yeah.
is, that is a very serious one.
Yeah, that's a
That,
very serious offense. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Mashallah.
that's a very serious offense. Of course, that's not a mere utterance of oath. You are there, with an intention. You know
Mm,
what you're saying. It's not like a passing comment or a casual thing, and it will have
mm.
ramifications. And you will
You're
pay the
covering the
price.
truth. Yeah,
Yes,
one is
yes,
trying to cover the truth.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah,
mashallah.
it's important for us to remember that if it's just you said something very casually by mistake, okay, it's fine. But if it's
Mm,
something very important that is going to be in a court or in a dispute that's going to affect people, and you lie intentionally or swear
mm,
by God and don't uphold the truth, not only it's a huge sin and you will pay the price, but you have to atone for it too. So even when you atone for it, you're probably gonna, your life is gonna get messed up, or God's gonna punish you in some other way too. So it's
absolutely.
always better to basically be, just prevent that. Don't be like, oh, I'm just gonna lie and have an oath, but break it, and then I'm gonna pay the whatever, free a slave, for example, or pay it for people. It will not work because you will be misguided in the long run because you don't fear God, you don't revere God. So yeah, that's something important to remember. MashaAllah.
Could I ask
We,
a quick question? Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead,
yes,
brother.
brother. Yes, please.
What do you guys think about the difference and significance of atoning for a sin and a punishment for a sin? So you see what I'm saying? So, for example, a punishment for adultery if is the symbolic lashes publicly done,
Yes.
uh, and so the question is that an atonement for the sin as well? And or there's another way of looking at it, or is it correct to say that is it your punishment for the sin? See what I'm saying? If somebody can have a deeper understanding on that, I'd like to hear it, mashallah.
Mhm. That's a very good question. I think they sometimes can overlap. Like, let's say you're a righteous person, you believe in God, and you commit a mistake, right? And then you repent, you get punished. Let's say you get the symbolic lashes, but on top of it, you will repent. You change your way, and you try to come back to God. So it's possible for the punishment to overlap um with atonement sometimes, if the person is a righteous person and wants to come back to God, but it also might not be for other for other people. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, I would just point out that to me, just even the definition, how can something overlap if they are somewhat the same, or they could overlap because they're different. So if they're different, what's the difference? That's how I would ask it.
Okay. If I may say something.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. When somebody commits an offense and is being punished, like the symbolic lashes, you see, if that punishment is carried out on the offender, that may overlap the punishment that God may intend to give him directly
Hmm.
for committing that sin. Because when God forbids anything, if we keep to that commandments, we are obeying God, even though we are doing that good to ourselves. But we know that breaking God's laws can, lead us to severe punishment from God Himself. But if we are able to carry out God's commandments on the offender, I think God will, forgive him, because the next verse would tell us that if they repent and reform, God is forgiver, most merciful. So this is what I think I want to say. God will forgive that person and not punish him uh, directly, because we know God's punishment is more severe. So these lashes may be symbolic, and the disgrace that that person is going to face in public is enough for him to, be ashamed of himself for committing this offense. This is what I have to say, inshallah.
Yeah, I still don't quite think I've heard an answer. I think it might be my own mind is not hearing it. I'm just
I
saying,
think,
see,
yeah,
there's times when we apply a punishment to people. The punishment for that done by humans, not God's retribution, but done by us, it's a punishment. Is that punishment an atonement? And you see what I'm saying? That's kind
Yes,
of, and so
that's the
yeah,
point.
yeah,
Jeff,
yeah.
I
That's the
only,
point I made. That's the point I
Jeff,
made. The punishment we institute or on the offender is an atonement of the punishment or retribution that God intends to give that person. So that has atoned for the
so,
retribution that God intends to give to that person. That's
so,
what I'm trying to say.
hey
Well,
guys,
Um,
so the word atonement only occurs once, and that's in 589. And it's specifically talking about violating your oaths. So if you swear an oath and you violate that oath, it's upon you to atone for that by doing whatever it says in that verse. I think it's feeding people or freeing a slave, something, blah, blah, blah. A punishment for a sin is, for example, if you commit adultery and you get a STD, that would be your punishment. And not only that, but your punishment in this life can be just as bad sometimes as the punishment in the hereafter. So we're all kind of living in a little bit of hell right now.
You see, the point we have to look at is the offender was he able to go through any punishment at all on
I
this
don't think
earth?
it's a personal. It's personal. It's a personal
No, no,
thing.
no,
It's not.
no.
I mean, the
I
only one that I
understand.
read about punishment is adultery. What are there any others?
Like even the
Adultery is
one
the only
you
one where it
even
Stealing,
specifies a
for
yeah,
punishment.
yeah,
example, if you
even the
steal,
one you just mentioned, even the one you just mentioned, yeah,
That's not a
five
punishment.
eight and
That's something you have to atone for. If you violate an oath that you've made with God, you have to atone for that. Atonement is like Jesus giving his life for everyone on earth. Right? That's what atonement is.
so what we're saying is that you atone for your sin, but you might also get punished, right? Like imagine a rich person who just
You,
lies and
but
like has an oath
you're
and
missing my
lies,
point.
and then
You missed my point. Atonement
what's
only occurs once in the Quran, and that's in verse 589. It's not about sin, it's about oath. Making an oath with God and violating it. You must atone for that.
so you think it doesn't apply
Applying
to
atonement to sins, I don't think that is a thing.
that's a
so
good point.
are you saying freeing a slave is not a kind of punishment for
No, that's an
violating?
atonement. That's an atonement. Yeah, that's an atonement. Look up the word atonement.
Yeah.
Yes,
How
sound
about
like
breaking your fast for no good reason? Because it's similar to this. You have to feed people or free a slave. Would
Yeah,
that also be atonement, in your opinion?
yeah. That's kind of a yeah.
Okay.
yeah, sound
Um,
like I
I don't
wanted
think
to
it
add
calls it. It
something.
doesn't
Let me
call it that
try.
in the Quran. It doesn't call it
just
that in
one,
the
yeah,
Quran. It
just
just
one
says if you
second.
break your fast, you have to do that.
Yeah. Brother Akib had a question. Go ahead, brother Akib. And
Oh,
then it
I
was
just had a comment to add to this discussion. I think there's definitely a difference between atonement and punishment. Atonement is when you're trying to reform for something that you did, while punishment is something that you feel the consequences of, and you don't want punishment. Nobody wants punishment, right? But it's forced upon you, right? So that's punishment. Atonement, you're given the opportunity to reform for what you did. That's why it's normally you, like all the verses where it's mentioned, it says if you do this, you, the person who's guilty of a particular offense, he has to do it or she has to do atonement, something she has to do. Whereas punishment, you can enforce it on the person regardless if they want it or not. So atonement is something that you do to kind of reform or rectify a behavior, to kind of correct yourself or to prove that you repent from it and so forth. I don't think it's punishment at all.
Well,
Mashallah. Well said.
Thank you,
um,
brother.
Brother
You
Akib.
said that really well.
Yes. And now I have to get into Brother Jeff's head. See what I have to say. Mashallah. Praise
uh,
God. Well said, Brother Akib. Not to digress from the topic, but before I need to go soon, but I just wanted to make a point about, you know, God tells us so many times in the Quran, says He does not make our religion hard or difficult. We make it difficult for ourselves. So going back to that issue of lie or when you're in trouble, people were talking again, the story of Joseph, where he kind of put something in his brothers that it made them to be like thieves. Yeah, that was something he had to do to get what do you call it, to get a good result. So sometimes you're forced into a situation we don't want to. My point is, please, we don't want to box ourselves in where we can't get out. God does not want that for us. If we find ourselves in dangerous situations, it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I am Sunni. What do you want to do? you know, and then move on so that you can live to continue to talk about the words of God, inshallah. Praise God.
praise God. Alhamdulillah.
So one more point on that atonement thing. The reason I brought it up is because I thought to myself, I've said with my mouth that once the lashes, people go through those lashes, then they've atoned for the sin. That's what I've said with my mouth, and I don't know if I'm right. That's what I'm saying. I'm thinking that that's the punishment for it, but that may not be the atonement for it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I see it the same way as one serving a punishment is a kind of an atonement. But some brothers have made some good points also by saying, uh, fasting or doing, some other things are not a punishment. But I see it the same way, because if it is not a punishment, you would go scot free for what you have done. But going through fasting, probably, let me say, maybe 60 days, that's 2 months, is a kind of punishment to some other people, because if you do not, commit that offense, you would not go through that fasting or some other, uh, uh, you know, uh, punishment that God is asking you to do. So I see it the same way, whether it is a symbolic lashes or fasting or freeing the slave or something like that. Anyway, God will increase our knowledge, but I see it in the same vein as an atonement for now. Mashallah.
Salam.
Mm.
Salam. Wouldn't
Salam.
atonement be your atonement with God? And then the punishment is more for, because when I look at the lashes, that's more like a deterrent for from others to do it, as a reinforcement of the severity of the type of offense that it is, right?
Yeah,
Because we
it is
have
Yes.
still
atone
between
is
you and your
mentioned five
Yes.
God.
times.
It
Atone
is
is
still
five
between you
times
and
Yeah.
in
your
the
But let
God.
me.
word.
Yeah.
You finished?
That
Right.
punishment,
No. But
even the
let me
symbolic
finish.
punishment is between you and your God, because
That's my
God
point.
said,
That the atonement is
God
between
said,
you and God.
yeah, no,
That's
I
my
mean
point.
even the punishment, the atonement
Yeah,
and
yeah. But
the symbolic lashes is also between you and your God, because it is God that said that symbolic
yeah,
lashes should
he's
be
telling you how
done
to
on you.
atone. But I'm saying
Yeah.
atone is mentioned 5 times in the translation, and I put them in there when I did the search. And there's a few
Oh, okay.
situations there with atonement. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Atonement is one word, but atone, the word, it comes from the word atone, which is you shall atone, which is basically your atonement for something. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's 5 situations in here that talk about that. Right? And I put them
Yeah.
Mashallah.
in the search. You can see the search.
Thanks,
So
Mike. I just realized that.
yeah,
Mashallah. You see?
so it's important to point out that the atonement seems to be something God is telling you what you can do. In one situation, when it talks about
Mm-hmm.
eye for an eye, nose for a nose, it says if you forfeit what's owed to you, basically by the person who victimized you, it
Mm-hmm.
will atone for your sins. Think about that. So
Alhamdulillah.
you didn't do the
Yeah.
crime. This is someone else did something to you, and there's something's owed to you for what they did to you. But if you forfeit it,
Hmm.
then God says it will atone for your sins, the person who's forfeiting what's due to them. So here's an example of someone who hasn't done anything wrong in that specific situation. But if he does this righteous act for what's owed to him, basically an injustice that was done, it will atone for his sins. Like it's powerful. So the word atone is used more than once. Atonement, yes, you're
Yeah.
right. Atonement itself, yes, but
Hmm.
it comes from atone. So the method by which you perform the atonement is how you atone, right? So it appears just from preliminarily looking at it, atonement is basically what God expects of you
Hmm.
for with regards to your soul and your sins. But with the
Hmm.
physical punishment, I guess I don't really see that with the lashes. I see that more as a deterrent, because there's another verse says if the two of them repent before him, don't touch them, leave them alone, right? So that's why I kind of see the lashes in the context of it as the deterrent to the outside world, because very few situations have corporal punishment in the Quran, very few. But we can also recognize that the corporal punishment is clearly a deterrent, and also symbolizing the severity of that, because adultery, if that gets rampant and we allow stuff like that to get rampant, look at the cult world today. Like it's just that's a real problem. It's destroying the family unit. It has all kinds of detrimental situations on society if something like that progresses to become a natural norm of things. So that's just my 2 cents there. Well, more like 5 cents.
And
Thank you,
Mashallah.
mashallah.
Hmm.
I want to add one thing
I
to
wa-
what. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I okay. Thank you, brother. So I wanted to share about this violating the oath 589. That My understanding of this is that it's both the intentions and the oath that are important. And that's what 589 is highlighting, because that we're responsible for our intention. So someone may be like their intention may be to deceive, and they may be swearing by God that the swear may come out, like what they're saying may be technically like correct, but their intention is to deceive through that. And God is saying, you're responsible for that too. It's not just what you're uttering, but your intention. So far the best example that I've heard that a submitter had shared in a study was that someone, like, there's this phrase in Farsi, which I wasn't familiar with, that like somebody's trying to sell a car and they say, like, this car has bread in it, like, as a phrase, like in mashin tush nune, like as a phrase to mean that it's going to be profitable, it's going to be a good thing for you to buy. And they may put a piece of bread in the car, and so technically they're swearing by God that there's bread in it, and they put a piece of bread in there, but they're using that to deceive someone to buy the car. So this is what this is my understanding of this verse. Like, both the intentions are important and what we're actually uttering. And then when we swear by God that we're going to do something, we need to do that because we've made God a guarantor for us. So there's another verse that talks about that. It's 1691. You shall fulfill your covenant with God when you make such a covenant. You shall not violate the oaths after swearing by God to carry them out, for you've made God a guarantor for you. God knows everything you do. So both the intentions and the actual utterance of the oath is important. That the intentions are good and righteous, and that if one swears by God, that one actually, that carries that out. That it's honored. It's not violated. The oath. Thanks.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, I just want to
Nobody is making a comment on this issue of intoxicants and gambling. Can somebody make a comment on that?
Hi, can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, we can hear you, brother.
Praise God.
Now we can.
Mashallah. On the issue of intoxicants, I have a friend of mine back in high school who was a very righteous person, who was praying 5 times a day, always inviting me to Quran, to become, a good Muslim, become a good submitter. Obviously, we didn't know anything about submission, but we wanted to be closer to God. Over the years, I see how this person regressed and started becoming a disbeliever in God and the Quran. And one of the things I observed was this person's, befriending, first of all, on, people that are not good, having bad friends, bad influence, just like we see in the Quran, that we should not ally ourselves with the disbelievers. To be in the camp of God with the believers and ally ourselves with them, be friends with them. And this person did not do that and chose bad friends for himself and start, a lot of usage of intoxicants. And intoxicants, just like we see in the verses, they take you away from God. They distract you from the Salah. They distract you from God. They distract you from Quran. It's a sneaky way of Satan of getting you away from God, with having you distracted or having you, go out and have fun with your friends and all these things. And I saw it firsthand how this person became a total disbeliever that, when I gave him the message of submission a few months ago with Code 19, he just rejected it, right? He rejected it, didn't want to believe in it, etc., etc. So it's a very dangerous thing to fall into for intoxicants. Same thing with gamblings. It causes actually a lot of animosity between the people. People gamble and they get addicted to it. They lose their house, they lose their car, they lose their family. just because they were going out and having fun and gambling. Truly satanic things that not only we should not partake in, but we have to avoid. It's a very important word that we have to avoid it. So if I know an event that, it's an unrighteous event, people are going to drink a lot of alcohol, engage in unrighteous things, I cannot even go there. I can't say that, oh, you know what? I'm a good person. I believe in God. I can just go there, have fun, but not partake in these. No, you should avoid it. And I remember my situations that I was going to these events, and thank God I didn't partake in them, but was really close to. I was really close to, even though I knew intoxicants were forbidden, they were haram, but I was really tempted to engage in them. But thank God I didn't. Now looking back, I should have not even gone there in the first place to put myself in that position, because you're making yourself vulnerable, and you could, basically commit a huge sin by engaging in that. Yes.
Thank you,
Praise
brother.
God.
God bless you. Praise God. Where is Navid today, brothers?
He's a little bit busy. He's not here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Go.
So,
Okay.
so may I speak on that issue right there? Example, what we were talking about earlier about being more righteous. We could possibly make something haram by saying something just like that. Okay, Warthen, I'm not trying to pick you out. I'm saying I do exactly the same thing you've done. And so I am now in a position, I think I'm condemning myself for saying that. Why? Because there are circumstances which there may be a greater sin. So for example, my family, they all drink. They like to drink. Okay? So what's happened, and here's the thing, I don't care about alcohol at all. God knows me, God protect me, but I could be around the alcohol all day long and I don't even want it. I have no interest in it, period. But the thing is if I take the position, which I have, that you just suggested, and I don't have relations with my family, which has happened, and they don't see me, and we don't ever aren't around. I've witnessed that the issue, the problem has become, is that we don't have a relationship at all, and I don't have an opportunity even to talk to them, the issue of religion can't even come up. That literally it sets me off as somebody who's arrogant, who self-righteous. It may even be a much greater sin to do that than to have this understanding. So the reason I'm bringing it up is because I really feel uncomfortable about the position I'm in, and it's based on this urge to take the most righteous or the most restrictive position, which actually may end up being a sin. That's what I see, inshallah.
MashaAllah.
So, brother, how do you understand avoid them? Do you think it's just simply not engaging in them, or not even going close to them?
No,
Well, let me just say that.
All right, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Okay, so I know I've taken the same thing. I've looked at the word avoid, and I'm saying, okay, I took the strongest version of it for myself, thinking that was the most righteous, and it has had consequences. And what I'm seeing is that avoid could mean avoid intake of it. Just don't put it in your body. Don't do it. You're responsible yourself. You can't control other people. Just avoid for yourself. You could have that understanding. Now, the thing I would say is, I don't know. I want to say this story, and it feels like sunnah of Dr. Khalifa, but I want to say it anyway. He had in these audios talking about going to a convention of all these different engineers, chemists. That's what it was, chemical chemist society. And he's going to these conventions, and he was talking. Not only do they drink, they have prostitutes around them and this kind of thing. And it's like, well, he didn't just refuse to go to the convention because of it. You see what I mean? So that to me, it makes me question my understanding there. Also, yeah, I don't know if Jerry's
I would
still
say,
here.
Okay, please let me make a comment on this. When you are forced by a certain situation for you to be where you are not supposed to be, you cannot be punished by that. Let's look at eating some of this food that God has prohibited. When you are forced to take them, God says He's even forgiver if you didn't do it maliciously. You see, going for a convention uh, for the chemist, biochemist, the main theme for going there was not for the drinking and for the prostitution and other things. It's for the subject, the course that they all have attended, and there is something definitely that they are meant, they were meant to do there. But when you derive the pleasure of going to sit with bad people for nothing sake, just to sit with them because you consider them as your friends and they have all this bad attitude, they drink, they prostitute, they do things like that. I think this is what should not be um, tolerated or permitted by or acceptable, if I may use that, acceptable to God or for you too as a righteous person. So I don't see any reason if I don't see any fault if we have to be somewhere where we're not supposed to be for certain reason that is not intended for that actual cause. So what Rashad did, I don't see any fault in that. I don't see any wrong in going for.
mm,
Uh, yes,
yeah.
this is what I want to say.
Can I just say
Um,
something again? All right, sorry. I
go
think
ahead.
the point Brother Ibrahim and Jeff are raising are important. That what is the function of this event and why am I going there? Is it like,
Exactly.
are we purely going there to just drink and have fun and engage in unrighteous things? Or is it
Uh-huh.
simply, let's say a business event or engineering event? Okay, people have some wine and maybe do other things too. But again, the main function of the event is not the intoxicants or gambling or whatever.
Mm.
So because of that, I think that you have to do a basically pros and cons for yourself. Why am I going to this event? Does it serve any function? Is it going to help me in any shape or form? If not, if I'm just going there to see my friends have a drink and have fun, it's better not to go there because I'm putting myself in a vulnerable position. So,
Right.
for example, with your family, Jeffrey, that was a good example. Many people
MashaAllah.
drink. It's fine, you can go sit with them, don't drink, whatever. But then, let's say a few friends of yours invite you to a nightclub, there's nothing good can come out of it, right?
Mm.
So I would say, that it's, we
And
have to avoid it to even not go
yeah,
there in the first place.
and for a righteous person to be there, even though the main function is for their school, whatever subject they are there for, because of this bad attitude that is being exhibited there, a righteous person, in his mind, he will not be comfortable seeing people doing that. So it's not that he derived joy sitting with these people for fun or something like that.
Can I add to
Right.
the
So
comment?
I
please,
wanted to
please,
add
MashaAllah.
something
please.
to what was just said
Fi-
regarding the Dr.
fi-
Khalifa's take on that. That one is, as far as I remember correctly, that statement he's sharing in his khutbah that he actually was attending a chemist convention. So everybody there was either a scientist or interested in chemistry. And he says, I go there and I see my colleagues. Obviously, he doesn't question, should I go to the conference? Should I not go to the conference? He attends it and he sees nothing wrong with it. But then he says, as I go to my room, I see my colleagues to, engage with prostitutes. And I felt bad about them. I lost respect from them. And that's it. I lost my respect for them. Simple. Thank you.
Mashallah. Yeah, what were you? There was another person who wanted to say something too.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about this, specifically about the intoxicants and the gambling. If you look at the very next verse in 591, it kind of makes it, at least to me, that it's pretty clear it's in the context of the consumption. Because it says God, the devil wants to promote animosity and hatred, and also we know about to not remember God, observe not to do salat. When you're intoxicated, these are the kinds of things that happen. Your personality trait has changed because your mind has been clouded. So when I look at 591 in light of 590, it kind of makes it clear it's not necessarily avoiding being around or going into a restaurant that has alcohol, for example. It's about avoiding the consumption of it. At least that's how I understand it when I look at 591.
Yeah,
just wanted to throw that out.
mashallah. So
Mashallah.
this is. Oh, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Brother Jeff. Yeah, so I agree, mashallah, that's my understanding as well. Now, I think, in each, for each situation in our lives, we can each think like what's good for me, what's good for my soul. But I think, again, in terms of general things, like God prohibits very few things, and it's things that are clearly bad for us. We know there's a lot of foods that may not be the best, healthy, good foods for us to eat, but God prohibits only a few things that are clearly bad, and then He's given us the senses and the mind to decide, like, how we want to, what we want to put in our body, or how we want to spend our time. So I think each person can think about, okay, is this situation, is this good for my soul? Is this how time? But in terms of general things, my understanding too is this is talking about the consumption of alcohol, not avoiding, everyone and everything that's where that's present. So I wanted to share that as well. And I think it's a good point. We have the other commandments as well, like honoring our parents, regarding the relatives. So we have to kind of take everything, and that we don't want to restrict, like, beyond what we don't want to. We were reading the verse earlier about we don't want to transgress the limits of our religion. So I'm not saying anyone was doing that, but I'm just saying. And I think that's a blessing. Like, I've gone to mixers where there has been alcohol, but by God's grace, I haven't drank. I didn't drink. The year I lived in Germany, I went to Oktoberfest because I wanted to see it, and thank God I didn't drink. But it was a blessing to be able to go and see what that's all about. And thank God we left before it started getting crazy. So, yeah, just wanted to share that. Thanks.
I want to add one more case study. It happened here on this server. It happened with community members in our community. It was literally their wedding, and their father insisted upon serving alcohol to the people because the father was paying for the wedding, was putting the wedding on, and literally this caused an existential crisis for our brothers and sister. And our brother and sister, literally, they felt like it was a test to whether they are compromising, they're standing up for their belief. It was literally they wanted to fly all the way home from this other country and just not attend their own wedding, and it was based on this understanding of being, well, avoid it. Avoid it means you can't be around it at all, which was promoted on this server. And I honestly, when they asked me, I said, well, that's the position I take myself, but I feel bad about it. I don't feel good that that's my position in this case, because I don't even think it's the most righteous one. So this is where my own existential crisis began. This isn't some theoretical thing. This is a real deal that it's happening, and people are saying prohibitions, like even myself, I put prohibitions that are possibly not from God, and it literally creates these situations that just happened. And that's why I'm trying to raise a red flag to this issue of being more pious than what God commands us to. Inshallah.
Yes, God.
Can I say something regarding this?
Yes, please.
Uh, this is really important for us to not adding or creating to what God has commanded us in the Quran. Obviously, we all agree on this. God says, "Do not drink." But anywhere in Quran, God says, "Do not participate in a wedding that they are serving alcohol." Or your father-in-law or your father who pays for this with family, and they serving drink. You shouldn't participate in this wedding. This is just a quick question. Back to you.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to specifically set out the setting of wedding. The whole debate is about the word avoid. So some people say avoid just from the consumption of it for their reasons, and some other people say that avoid even in the sense that don't even go to the events or places, that's what that's it's being served over there. And again, to me, I think you just have to do a pros and cons list to see, okay, what is this event about? Why am I going there? Like, how much intoxicants are they using? Is it like the sole purpose of this event? And then you just have to make a decision on your own, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. I think those things, this is my understanding as well, like each thing is a personal decision, but in terms of God's laws, and I think God's very specific. Like he makes it clear because, he doesn't want to confuse us. So it says like intoxicants are abominations, intoxicants, gambling, altars of idols, games of chance are abominations. You shall avoid them. It doesn't say avoid everyone and everywhere where, this is being served, or everyone who's doing this, or everywhere where this is being done. Even for masjids, it says don't pray, like the masjids that are not based on righteousness. God says don't pray in them. It doesn't say you can't go in them. So one may go and give the message, talk about the message, or want to see like some architectural design, or it's a historic site, or um, uh, place of a touristy kind of place. One wants to see it. Again, each person, it's a personal decision how one wants to use one's time, and weigh like, okay, this is something that is good for me, what I want to do, how I want to use my time. But in terms of um, God's laws, God has made it clear, like, and it's specific, just like the dietary prohibitions. God makes it clear, like what specifically is prohibited, and we don't want to go beyond that. That's my understanding. Thanks. For in general, for ourselves, we can say, "Oh, I prefer to do it this way," and that could be, each person then is responsible for their own soul. But in terms of general laws and rules, thanks.
MashaAllah, sister. I just wanted to add that during the years that we have been submitters, like in the last 30 some years, um, we have faced a lot of weddings among people, like exactly what you said. The groom family wants, for example, alcohol, the bride doesn't want alcohol. And they emphasize on it because you see, they're going to a wedding with, I don't know, 300, 200 people, and the guests are coming from both sides of families. So usually the person, if they're swimmers that get married to each other, they do not want to have alcohol. But then again, the families, they do want alcohol. So it becomes difficult. So some people say no, cannot bring alcohol, and they have done that too. We don't serve alcohol, period. The other one says, okay, if you don't want to be part of the alcohol group, you can put a bar outside of the ballroom, and there, anybody who wants to have drinks can go there and have a drink. Now, some also go higher. They say, well, you can go on outside and buy your alcohol yourself and come and join us. So that has been done all many different shapes. But buying your own drink, I think, is the best thing because you're not paying for it. The guest, he wants it, he can always go buy a drink. That's not a big deal. That's what I think. I mean, I don't think. I just remember from the experiences of other people that I'm sure. Any more comments, please?
Mashallah. Yeah, and I just want to clarify my own comment. I'm talking about like me, like each person going to places where people are drinking or where it's being served. If it's my function, my preference, like I wouldn't, God willing, I would not serve alcohol because I don't want to mediate something that's not good. If I'm in the position to decide, if I'm not in the position to decide, if somebody else is deciding, then it's between them and God. We're each responsible for our own souls. But if I'm in a position to decide, God willing, I would not serve alcohol at my functions because I wouldn't want to mediate something bad. But that's just my my understanding, and based on that verse that we don't want to mediate something.
Correct.
If it's my decision. Thanks.
Sister, you're absolutely correct. But in these cases, it's not one family deciding, one individual deciding. It's talking about a wedding. We're not talking about you and me going to some festival or not drink. There are other people who do not accept our religion, but they're family and friends of the groom or the bride. So we cannot make a decision for ourselves. Yeah, we can make a decision for ourselves. You go to your parents, to the other side, say, we do not drink, we do not wish to serve drink. And they say, okay, you don't drink. I have tons of friends who want to drink. But I was answering to Brother Jeff's example about how the wedding fell apart over drinking. So that's what I was actually commenting on. Thank you. Any more comments?
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
You know, it just seems like the point of a wedding is unification of families, and it's interesting. Do we use a religious law to cause division between families? I don't know. It's just a broader understanding, a broader perspective.
Yeah, I think that those can be challenging. Thank you for sharing, Sister GPS and everyone. Those can be more challenging situations at weddings because it's a big event. It's important to people, and people want. But again, I think if it's two submitters, hopefully, like the bride and the groom can agree that okay, we don't believe in alcohol. It's not a good thing, so we don't want to serve it. And then it's that couple's wedding. So I think they should be the ones to decide for that event, like the things that is in their power and the things that they can make choices on. I think that's. But I know yeah. May God make it easy for all the submitters to always do what's right and pleasing to God. And I'm just sharing my thoughts and understanding. I'm not saying but this is just kind of, yeah, my thoughts and understanding. Thanks.
MashaAllah.
In general, this is a larger discussion about compromise and being pious and faithful, and in what ways that it's always very difficult. These lines aren't really sharp lines, and it seems that the younger we are, the more black and white things are, and then the older we get, there's a lot more nuance and sophistication, and this can go from everywhere from debating with people of different ideas to all the way to your wedding. So, mashallah.
MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Oh, so can I add on this issue? As a submitter, if I have a chance to join with my family or occasion, so according to the Quran and the Messenger of Covenant, all this, here, and what I'll do, I'll participate in the event. I can, take a lunch or dinner with them, and I can talk to them, hi and hello, as usual. But I'll not go further. I'll not sit with them where they'll be consuming the intoxication, and I don't want to participate with them any vain talk. We know that actually, most of the the festival or the occasion, in the seminar occasion, what they are doing a lot of things, vain talk, so much, the gathering, social function, if for our soul is not aligned with with this festival or the occasion. So what I'll do, I'll join with them, take the lunch and dinner, but I'm not going to participate with them as a long time in vain talk and sitting with them, even though I will not drink with them, like that, we will not take the alcohol, but I am not going to sit with them on that side. I can take the dinner and I can talk to them. That's my position. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that I just wanted to share this thought that like that we have the verses of the Quran and the things that are clear for us, and we try to. I think my understanding is a good approach is to try to apply that to the best of our ability in our lives, and then the things that are not clear, I think a good approach is to ask God for guidance, because situations can be different, and asking God, okay, sometimes we all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? And I think a good approach is just ask God for guidance, and we can share with each other like what I would do, or what each person can share that wants to, like, this is what I think, or this is what I would do. But of course, it's God is the judge. God knows our situation. God knows it's a journey. Each person has their journey, and God knows where we're at, and all of that. So yeah, it just came to me to love to share that. Thanks.
MashaAllah. I think what all of us are doing is just to ensure that we observe righteousness and we are close to God, and by observing every command carefully. But as much as we try to um, observe God, we must also be careful not to start, prohibiting things that God has not prohibited for us. It will make life difficult for us and for others, because these are not God's law. So, mashallah, we just have to be careful. Alhamdulillah.
All right, praise God. Does anyone else have any questions or any topics that they want to discuss? We're in the open section of Quran study, so you can talk about anything. Anyone?
If there's nothing to say, we can go ahead with the Quranic study. Or is the Quran study over?
The Quran study is over, so usually people have questions. If they don't have any question, we can continue. It's fine. Just wondering, Sister Peace GPS, you had a question about, I think, I don't know, I think it was about adultery. I'm not sure if you still remember your question or if you asked that question. If
Let's go
you,
ahead with the. Let's read some verses. Maybe we have more
all
to
right,
reflect on, inshallah.
sure. So,
Brother, brother
Brother
War Thunder.
Thunder, can you put more
Yes,
verses?
regarding the question that I had, it was just a simple fact that adultery is promoted. Definitions is different. We had a long discussion the other night, and I just wanted to get a quick answer, not to really dive into it, because he was talking about it earlier. What is adultery? If a man and a woman who are not married to anyone and they have sexual activity, is that called adultery?
Mm,
Or is it when
uh,
just one of them is married and
mm.
they are doing it out of, the person is married and doing this act? Is
Yeah,
that just adultery? That's my
yeah.
question.
In my understanding, we you see sometimes uh, translating certain things in English or in other language could make it somewhat difficult to understand uh, understand those things. But let's look at the Arabic text. Does the Arabic text distinguish adultery and fornication? In my understanding, I think it means just one thing. And if it is translated as adultery, then we have to take it adultery, whether it is for the single men and women, or single man and a married woman, or a married man and a single woman, or both are married. Zina is zina in Arabic, and God forbids zina completely to all those who are submitters, whether they are single or married. This is my own understanding, inshallah.
Yeah. So, my understanding is that it's a sin, right, to engage in any sort of relationship outside of marriage, whether before or even when you're married. But
Mm.
to have the punishment of the 100 symbolic lashes, I haven't done extensive research, but we were talking about it once. And me personally, I was convinced that the punishment is only when at least one of the participants is married. So if two single people decide to do it, still a huge sin. However, I don't think that it deserves of that symbolic punishment.
If I may just
So
add
if
in,
yes, please.
thank you. My understanding of it is when we look at all the verses in the Quran and we plug in whether it's married people or anybody who has relations outside of their spouse, to me it's all the same. Like the Arabic says, it doesn't differentiate. And if we plug in the fact that it has to be a married person, well, in chapter 24, it says the adulterer will end up marrying the adulteress or an idol worshiper, and the adulteress will end up marrying an idol worshiper or the adulterer. You know what I mean? And God says this is prohibited for the believers. So
Yeah.
if this was the case, it wouldn't really make sense, because at that point, that means if your spouse commits adultery, you are prohibited from being in a relationship with them.
Yes.
Then automatically you would have to divorce. So to me, this doesn't really make sense. I'm of the opinion that it's any kind of sexual relation outside of a lawful marriage or a union, like common law for people who are not submitters or something like that.
So, my
So,
question is about
sorry,
the
brother.
punishment.
Sorry, brother. Let me say one thing before
Yes.
you. You see, about the punishment, we have, I think, two punishments in the Quran. And I think one in Surah 24 and one is in Surah 4:25 for those who are free to get married. It says half of it, right? So we can look at, for those maybe who are single, 50, for those who are married, 100. But the um, main uh, point is is zina permitted on the singles or on the married only? No, zina is prohibited on every one of us as long as we are submitters, whether single or married. This is my own understanding for now. MashaAllah.
Praise
I just
God.
want to add, mashallah. I say this too. I want to add just this understanding. Even though you go to the English dictionary, and they'll always tell you the very quick definition of it. They'll say that it involves an American married person, the English definition. However, that's not the full picture, because if you look deeper into it, you'll find that the religious faiths coming from the Protestant tradition, specifically Calvinism, they definitely made a ruling that adultery covered all of these situations. And I will just say, as a case study myself, growing up in America and as a Protestant, it never even occurred to me that it would be just a married person. And that concept in all my life in English culture, in people in America, it never came up once that it meant just married people. We just casually talk about it. We know what it means. It means anybody having sex out of marriage. But I can't be the rule. It's a case study is what I mean. Thank you.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, my understanding as well is that it's includes both single and married. And one of the verses is 24:3, which Brother Elham had, I think, was referring to as well, that, clearly the adulterer and the adulteress here, it's referring to them as adulterer and adulteress, but they're not married. And then the next verse, 24:4, says, those who accuse married women of adultery, then fail to produce 4 witnesses, you shall whip them 80 lashes. So then that shows that it's also adultery when somebody's called adultery when somebody's married. And so this verse 24:4 also mentions like the 4 witnesses, like, and about the lashes, 50, 100, I think that verse might be 425, and that's referring to someone who is a freed. Let me bring it, because I think it'll be. It's a long verse, but it's referring to marrying slave women, and then it says once they're freed through marriage. So this is like toward the end of the verse, because it's a long verse. I don't want this to get too long, so I'm just reading that part of it. Once they're freed through marriage, if they commit adultery, their punishment shall be half of that for the free women. So, having been a slave, it's a very different situation and a different responsibility then. So then if a woman who's been a slave is freed through marriage and then commits adultery, then it's going to be 50, it would be 50 symbolic lashes for her. My understanding. Thanks.
Thank you so
I
much,
forgot to say this.
for sharing. Go ahead, dear.
Oh, thank you, dear. I just wanted to say as usual, I'm away from the chat, so I forgot to say that earlier. Thanks.
MashaAllah. Okay, now that we have some sort of understanding that adultery goes for married and single people, what is the punishment? Is there a punishment there or
Yeah,
no?
so yeah, that's what we were talking about, and I think the punishment is for when they're married, and that's what we see in the verses that is talking about a married woman. And I think that's more in line with the Quran, that if people decide to commit a sin on their own, something that is not harming the society, for example, it's not stealing something, then there's no punishment for it. They can engage in it, whatever. The law does not have to get involved. And when 2 single people decide to commit in this unrighteous act, I think it's not aligned with the Quran for us to punish them on something that both of them decide to do consensually, right? Now, it would be different when one of the participants is married. When one of the participants is married and they're cheating, then they're hurting another person. It would bring a lot of pain on the person who's spouse is in getting involved in the cheating or being cheated on. So because of that, it makes more sense for the symbolic lashing to be for people who are cheating in that sense.
Okay,
I have a
brother.
comment on this.
Okay, go ahead. Somebody else had a comment. Thank you, brother.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I'll give you an example. Chapter 4, verse 15. And it says, the subheading says health quarantine. It says, those who commit adultery among your women, you must have 4 witnesses against them from among you. If they do bear witness, then you shall keep such women in their homes until they die, or until God creates an exit for them. So if we plug in the understanding that one person has to be married, then this verse will make sense. So what is so basically, if we read the footnotes, says a woman witnessed by 4 people in the act of committing adultery on 4 different occasions, 4 different partners, represents a danger to public health. Such a woman is a depository of germs, and the health quarantine protects the society from her. A good example of an exit that saves a quarantined woman is marriage. Someone may choose to marry her and thus protect her and the whole society. So when we plug in this understanding, it really doesn't make sense, right? So first of all, the verse doesn't specify married or unmarried. It just says those who commit adultery among your women, right? So let's just say, okay, if this is a single woman, then all she can avoid the health quarantine by choosing to have adultery with just single men, and she's not a repository of germs. This doesn't really make sense, right? Or if the woman is married already and she's going and having relations with other people outside of her marriage, well, she's already married. So how do you quarantine her? You
So
know what I
what I
mean?
was trying to explain the punishment of the symbolic lashes, I think, is for married people, not that adultery is only for married.
Yeah.
You
No,
understand? I'm just trying
I hear
to
that. I hear
say
that.
that.
No, I totally hear that. But the word here is adultery here. So we're trying to find out what is adultery, because God simply says, whoever commits adultery, you shall the couple that commits adultery, you shall lash them 100 times. So if our understanding of adultery is that a married person has to be involved, then if we plug that understanding into
No.
415, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So I'm not saying adultery is just when a married person is involved. I'm saying the punishment, when the punishment comes into place, is in the context of a married woman. You see?
Where do we get that
If
from,
it
though?
did not,
And
if it
why?
did not say that, then I think maybe it could be a little bit different, right?
But it doesn't say just a married woman, though. The only thing about married women is that if somebody falsely accuses a married woman without witnesses, you shall lash them. What is it, 80 times or something like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just additional special protection for married women. That's how I see those verses. God is just specifying. So in general, the punishment for adultery is very clear. It's 100 symbolic lashes. That's just across the board. It doesn't specify married, unmarried. It just says those who commit adultery, you shall lash them 100 times, and do not basically let your pity stop you from carrying out this punishment, right? So that's what the verse says. Just whoever commits adultery, lash them. It doesn't specify married, unmarried. It just says the couple that commits it, lash them 100 times symbolically. Now, for married women, if somebody accuses her without witnesses, then that person, the accuser, has to be lashed, I think, 80 times. But so the question, what it boils, yeah.
Elham, who is to be lashed 50 then? Going by
50,
the,
five, 50
yeah,
times, 50?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
going
the
by,
slave,
I think, 425, who is to be lashed 50?
425.
I think that's the verse.
Yeah, so here God is just saying if you marry a believing slave and then they commit adultery, their punishment is half of that. Because, first of all, now we don't really have any more slaves, there's no more slavery. So this, I don't know, I don't see where the situation would
Yeah,
apply in today's
yeah,
day and age. But the reason for that,
we're not only going to look at slavery, but this time around they are free to get married. That means they are single. They are not yet married, so their punishment should be half.
who, the
Or is
slaves or
it?
the,
Or is it because? Or is it because they have been slaves and they were, you know, all their life was, under severe a miserable life or a kind of torture, a kind of unhealthy life. This is why God suggests 50 for them, or
Well,
a free person is to be last 50.
yeah, no. So here's the thing: when slaves, according to the Quran, when you marry them, you have to set them free. Whoever's the owner of that slave has to set them free. But now remember this: so somebody who's in bondage, who's a slave, who has basically no freedom, now they have an option. I can get married and I can be free. It's extremely tempting. It's extremely tempting. You know what I mean? So God is saying that if this person who was a slave and now they're free, sometimes they might want to marry just to get out of the slavery, the bondage.
That's ever.
You know what I mean? So the way I see that is God is kind of being compassionate towards them, and that they may seek out marriage just so they can be free. They may not have necessarily gotten married for those reasons. Mhm.
Sometimes it is not even the slave that may seek marriage. Sometimes a free man or a free woman can see a slave that she falls in love with, or he falls in love with, and may want to marry the slave.
Wow.
So the guardian would
God
have to
bless you.
fulfill this obligation
Wow.
to free that. Somebody is making noise.
Sister Peace GPS, could you please mute yourself? Thank
Oh,
you.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Sorry, I'll do it in a minute. Let me just find my phone. I got it. Thank you
So
so much.
yeah, so sometimes it is not even the slave
Marrying,
that, yeah, a free person can see a slave woman or a slave man to, want to marry that person, and
yeah.
then the guardian have to release or free that person in order to get married. So, but the context, what are we looking at? The 50 lashes, should it be for a free person, a single person, or who? Or it must be a slave, a person that is free?
Well, let's look at the verse, brother. So once they are
Okay.
freed through marriage, so now
Hmm.
they are free. They used to be slaves, though. If they
That's
commit
right.
adultery, their punishment shall be half of that for free women. So
Exactly.
if you marry a free woman who is not a slave and she commits adultery, well, her punishment is 100 lashes. If you marry a slave who is now free, if they commit adultery, her punishment is only half of that. And if you notice, this is why God says, marrying a slave shall be a last resort for those unable to wait. To be patient is better for you. God is forgiving, most merciful. Because God knows that, and again, this is to me the mercy of God, that He recognizes that for a person who's in bondage, to get married and be freed through marriage is extremely, extremely tempting. You know what I mean? And honestly, I also wouldn't blame somebody for wanting to get out of that bondage. It's not right, but still, God is compassionate. They still get the lashes, they still get the punishment, but God is being merciful and only giving them half of that because of their prior situation and condition that they were in. But again, that's why God says, "Hey, don't," because maybe their motives for wanting to get married and be free may not be 100% pure. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. But I think we're talking about if free single people commit adultery with each other, then what is the punishment? As far as I can tell, the verse simply says those who commit adultery, you should lash them 100 times. It doesn't specify married or single. So if there's any debate, it would be on the definition of adultery, because the verse doesn't specify married or single. The only time it specifies in married is regarding the slave, if they commit adultery after marriage. You know what I mean? After they're freed. That's the only time it differentiates between single or married. But that's specifically for that slave, again, because the circumstances that they were in. To me, it's just a mercy from God. But for single people, even though yes, adultery between married people is even worse than single people, but the punishment is one and the same.
Thank you, brother. Great explanation. My other question is, say, a married couple or a single people commit adultery, and there is no witness, but they know that they committed adultery, whether they were single or married. Um,
Mm-hmm.
can they repent and ask God for forgiveness, or they have to go to somewhere and say, you know what, I committed adultery, please lash me. But if they repent and they change their way, what happens to that 100 lashes? Does it get
From
pushed away? If there was
wonderful
no
question.
witness. Yeah.
Wonderful question. God bless you. So, from what I understand, God sets the requirement saying to lash somebody, you need to have 4 witnesses. Without those 4 witnesses, you cannot carry it out. And this is also a mercy from God. Now, people may commit that sin. They may never be caught with 4 witnesses, but they repent and reform and they stop, right? To me, this is also just the 4 witnesses alone. God makes it because honestly, public humiliation is one of the worst things. Your reputation goes down the drain. It very negatively affects your future prospects for marriage. You know what I mean? Nobody, even among like most people who are not yet married, they don't really want to go around stating who they've slept with and things like this because it can damage their reputation. So one, the social lashing shouldn't be taken lightly. It is a severe punishment, whether we may think it is or not. It's the social humiliation and social pressure is a very, very strong deterrent, as far as I see. But to me, the requirement is you have to have 4 witnesses to carry out the punishment, and even that is a difficult situation. Essentially, the people who get caught are the people who are flagrantly doing this in public, and they basically have no regard, they have no care, kind of a thing. But I believe the 4 witnesses have to be there. If you're single, you commit it, and later on you repent and you reform. There's another verse, chapter 4, verse 16. It says, "The couple who commits adultery shall be punished. If they repent and reform, you shall leave them alone. God is Redeemer, most merciful." So that's kind of how I see it. I don't think that if somebody admits, "Oh yeah, once upon a time I committed adultery," in my ignorance, that you committed it, okay, now we have to punish you to cleanse. We have to lash you to cleanse you. This is not the case. There's another verse in the Quran. It actually, number one, it highlights the grossness of adultery. I think God calls it evil behavior or wicked behavior. Maybe somebody can help me find that. No, I think it's called wicked behavior. And then God says something that I find is very interesting. Search all the verses. No, it is evil behavior.
So
TVIL.
yeah, so
Yeah,
the
go ahead. I'll
single,
look up the verse in the meantime.
the single, are they to have the 50 symbolic lashes, or it must be 100? The single who are not a slave in any way.
So I think that was 1732 about the verse. You shall not commit adultery. It is a gross sin and an evil behavior. And so, yeah, so God just says that it's, doesn't specify if you're single or married. It says it's a gross sin and an evil behavior. And so the only...
Sorry, sister. No, complete your sentence. I found the verse that I was looking for, but go ahead, please. I want you to finish your train of thought.
It's not, okay.
Can you put it in the chat, brother Elham?
Sorry, I'm just driving. I'm having a hard time. It's 25:68.
Okay.
If someone can do it for me. This is a very
25:68.
interesting verse. Yeah, 25:68. Chapter 25, verse 68.
Okay,
Yeah, and this is very interesting to me. So one, we learn adultery is evil behavior, and then in 25:68, we learn something interesting too. It says, "They never implore beside God any other God, nor do they kill any soul, for God has made life sacred, except in the course of justice. Nor do they commit adultery. Those who commit these offenses will have to pay." You know what I mean? And the way I understand that is, so the single people who commit adultery and nobody ever finds out, God is saying they have to pay. And they do pay. They pay in their happiness. Like they honestly, having sexual relations outside of marriage is a horrible thing for your soul. We may not recognize it, but it's very damaging to you physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Sexual intercourse is something that unfortunately has been taken very lightly and made to seem like something is not that big of a deal. But even psychologists are saying those who have multiple sexual partners, they have lots of relationship issues because they have trouble bonding with somebody, attachment issues, things like this. It becomes problematic.
Yeah, it is confirmed that they are susceptible to diseases, different diseases. Yeah.
Not just diseases, brother. Not just emotional and psychological problems.
Apart from that one, no, it's even a problem. Yeah, apart from that one, they are susceptible to to diseases also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I understand
So
from this verse is
so
when God says
yeah.
they have to pay, that they do pay. They pay, and I think Rashad talks
No,
about
of
this. He says
course,
like if you commit adultery, you will pay severely with your
of course,
happiness, and he
of
says
course,
severely. You know what I mean?
of course.
So that's
But
because
my
some yeah.
my question still is the single. Is the single to receive the symbolic 50 lashes, whether he's free or not, or it must be 100 lashes, just like
Uh,
the.
a free person committing it gets 100 lashes,
Okay.
single or married, as far as I understand from the Quran. Because the question is, what is adultery? Does adultery include? Does it have to have a married person involved, or can it also be two singles? And as far as we see from the understanding from the Quran, we plug in both understandings. The one that makes the most sense is that it's anybody, single or married, both single, both
100
married,
lashes,
single or married. Yeah, exactly.
mashallah.
That's as far as I see from the Quran. But even then, God is so merciful because adultery is something that people have been having problems with for a very long time. You know, God knows it's not easy for a lot of people to abstain from this. Throughout history, this has been a big challenge. So to me, I see this as a mercy from God to let people come around and change. Because even like, what are the chances of you committing adultery and then you're witnessed by 4 people? You have to either be blatant about it, doing it in public, or just very shameless about it. You know what I mean? And things
Yeah,
like this.
that verse right there is what makes me think that it's actually you have to be married to commit adultery, because if a woman goes with 4 married men, that's the only way that you could get the 4 witnesses that are required to
How?
put her away, because she's doing bad stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if 4 men are done wrong by a woman, by them committing adultery with her, because men can have more than one wife, so they can pursue another woman.
Well, there's
But if you
conditions
have
on that, but
4
yeah.
men, if you have 4 men who come, yes, I had sex with her. 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 She's a proven adulteress.
Even the
So
man,
yeah.
if
Just, I mean, if we're gonna get
even if the man
hypothetical,
is
I
not,
hate
even if the man,
hypotheticals.
no, what I'm saying, even if the man is not married to 4 women, if he commits adultery with 4 women, then he's liable. He's also guilty of the offense, the same offense.
Unless he was intending to marry her, for
How
example.
many? How many would he marry, and why would he be going around, committing adultery with different women?
Well, so now we're getting into like, so what is the definition of marriage, right?
Yeah, marriage is different from those who
Marriage is
go out outside
mutual
their
attraction
marriage.
and dowry.
Yeah,
Marriage
yeah.
is just mutual attraction, right? Yeah.
No, no,
It's
no,
an
no, no, no.
institution. It's an
Yeah. You
institution.
say you give
Yeah,
a. Usually, it involves the family
exactly.
and they come up with the dowry and all of that stuff. This is for younger people, right? Younger people do all of that kind of thing. But in our society today, maybe these are rules that are going to be more prevalent in the future, if we become more tribal, or because in a tribe, it's very clear, right? In a
I think
small,
it's
let's say you have a tribe that's 100 people, or even 1,000 people. Everybody knows everybody in a tribe, right? And they're all married, right? So if some woman or some man they get together, it's gonna be obvious that something's up there. They probably caught
yeah.
him in the act, right? They caught them both in the act, and they decided then you got to punish them, right?
So I just want to
But
quickly
you know
just
what? In today's world, you're not going to do any of this stuff, right? You're not going to
Brother
haul 2
Jerry,
people up and do
this
100
Quran
lashes.
applies. The Quran
Brother
applies for
Jerry,
all
he's
times.
not
Yeah,
No, the
talking. We
Quran
are not
applies for all
talking
times.
about we are not talking about a tribe. We're talking about everyone on earth,
Yes.
anybody.
exactly.
So
You're not
this
going to
law
you're not
is
going to
not
give
for
anybody
some tribe.
lashes. You're
Okay.
not going to give anybody lashes because you're not going to catch
Okay.
anybody,
Okay.
Who said so?
right?
Oh,
Oh my.
No, let's be
No,
realistic.
no,
Let's be
no, no,
realistic.
no. No, you can catch people if you go through investigation. You can definitely you'll
No,
get
you're
yeah,
not going to
people.
Brother
do that. You're
Jerry,
going to do
for
that.
marriage
You're going
they
to
need
go and you're going to
mutual
go, ooh,
attraction.
Of
I think
course, of
they're
course.
I think
Of
they're
course.
committing
Without those
adultery. I
two,
Okay,
need
you
to go
can't get
figure out
married.
if
hold on,
they're
That's what
doing
everybody.
it
God
or not.
asked.
Hold
And I'm
on,
going to kick
everybody.
them in the ass. You're
And
not
No.
going
now,
to do
if
that.
Okay, that's
now
okay.
if
That's
a
okay.
single
Let's take it
person
one by
Yeah,
one. One
has
by
a
Yeah,
one.
I've
sexual
been listening.
let's
I've
relationship
take
just
it
been
one by
outside
listening
one.
to
of
this. I've been listening
Jerry,
to this
Jerry,
conversation. Hang on. Let me
one woman
finish.
and
Jerry,
a guy,
relax.
whoever.
Let me
Jerry,
finish,
That
relax.
please.
sexual relationship
Please let me
so
finish my
far from
thought.
the comments I received
Relax,
is that
relax.
that
Let's
act
take it
is
one by
called
one, please.
adultery. So
Mm.
whether you are married or you are single, both are called adultery. Now, there is
Yes.
one other type of adultery that if a woman is having a sexual relationship with a witness of four men in four different occasions and so forth, that individual is more like a prostitute than somebody having you know, having doing adultery. That's why they say lock them up, because they're not to be in a society, because they're prostitutes basically until somebody will find a way to marry them. So the question is, I had for earlier was like, okay, imagine a woman and a man commit adultery. They're both single. Okay, nobody catches them,
They're not
right?
committing
And
adultery. If
they
they're
come
both
and they
single, they
say,
might have
wow, we
mutual
did this
attraction.
thing wrong, may God forgive us, we repent, we reform, and we will never do this again. Now, that those single people, do they have to be lashed 100 times? Same with the married people. What if nobody witnessed it, but a married person finds out, like, I committed adultery. Now, what should I do? Should I repent and reform, or go announce and say I have committed adultery? So come and give me 100 lashes. That's what I'm trying to get
Repent
at.
and reform.
And I think Brother Ehsan really opened this whole subject very nicely. And I understand basically exactly what he's saying. Wonderful. God bless you. Any more comments, please?
So, Jerry,
Yeah.
what are you trying to
I
say?
just wanted.
What I'm trying to
Okay,
say is that you guys are going round and round and round about hypotheticals, and you're going round and round. I mean, you're just endlessly going around in circles, around in circles, around in circles. And it's just frustrating to sit here and listen to it, because this stuff is like, from when you're in a tribe and you have 1,000 people, everybody knows everybody. And all of these rules are very, very clear. In a world of 1 billion people, you're never going to implement these rules. You're never going to pull two people and give them 100 symbolic lashes, unless it's in your own your community. So, for example,
Yep.
you come home from work and you find your daughter in bed with a boy. What do you do?
Need 4 witnesses.
now do you have to wait for four witnesses to punish them?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
So
No,
if you look at all the verses for adultery,
no,
it
no.
says
You don't have to wait for four witnesses. They are being caught. It's an offense they are committing. You have to punish them for
so
that. Hmm.
So
right.
maybe
So
you have to,
now
hey,
imagine
honey,
this.
come
So now
here.
you have to
You,
do.
you call your wife and you call all your kids in and you bring them in and you go, okay, now we got 4 witnesses. What do? We pull
Yeah.
together the
Then you
whole
lash them.
community and say, okay, on Saturday, we're going to have 100 lashes against my daughter and this boy who I caught fornicating in my house.
Yes.
We're talking about hypotheticals. I'm just making a ridiculous hypothetical that isn't so
No,
ridiculous
it's
because
not
it happens all
ridiculous.
the time.
Yep. Yeah. It's 100 lashes.
But what are you
It's
going to
100
do?
lashes.
Set up a date? Okay, Saturday, I want everybody to come so they can witness me giving this guy and my daughter 100 lashes for fornicating, for committing adultery.
Sorry,
Were
I
they
cut out
committing
previously.
adultery? Were they
What do
really
you
committing
expect?
adultery, or were they just two young
But
kids exploring their mutual attraction?
No, who
According
permits
to the
them to
Quran, it's
explore
adultery.
such a mutual attraction? Who permits them to do that?
may I make a comment? This situation never arises in the communities of today's. So there is no situation that you can actually implement those punishments. This
Exactly.
punishment has to be the law of the land. Meaning, if the land, if the community is have a chosen a righteous government, Quranic law is being practiced as a community, whether country, state, whatever, then these are applicable. There is no such community, therefore there is no. So in a case that you find, let's say, as the example Jerry just said, you find your daughter in bed with somebody. What are you going to do? The punishment is not applicable. You already caught them. The judge in that household is the man. Yes, the punishment he can apply is it has to be within the punishment of that state or the larger community. Meaning, he can just ban them from. No, he can even ban them to see each other. Or he could maybe, if he's a teenage kid, make sure that the teenagers, there are certain things they can do up to that point. But the father is the judge in that household. Whatever he can do in that household, as Quranic as it can be, but as long as it fits in with the law of the land. So this is pretty much explained. If the rule of God was already over the land, then these were the righteous way of punishment. And even within that, God has made it so difficult that would not happen. This only to place a scare in the hearts of those who want to do those, but not actually practical. In very few cases, you may be able to apply that. So it's just something to know that what God thinks and tells us the righteous way, but we cannot really practice it. That's how I
Yes, we
see.
can.
No, okay, Brother
Yes, we
Hassan.
can.
What I want to understand is, if it is a system that observes God's commandments, what do you think should happen to these young boys and girls that were found committing this adultery?
Okay, the punishment is something you impose on somebody. Imposing a punishment, it means you could lawfully do that. If the person that you, even as your son, if it, or your daughter, they do not want to abide by the Quranic law, which in that case is not lawfully can be supported, then there is nothing you can.
No, brother.
You tell me the situation that you could actually implement,
Sure,
get
happy
arrested
to.
and go to jail.
Happy to. No, happy to.
Yeah.
It can be implemented. So even if it's not the law of the land, if you're in a community of submitters and two submitters get caught committing adultery and you have the four witnesses, you tell them, listen, these are God's commands. We're supposed to lash you. If they refuse and say no, then that just proves their own unrighteousness and unwillingness to submit to God's command. But if they're righteous, they will acknowledge it and accept it and say, yes, I accept this punishment. Once it
But do
becomes
you
law of the
really
land,
think you're going to do
once it
that?
becomes, yeah,
Brother, if
100%.
No, you're not
100%.
going to
I know
do
it may
that.
sound ridiculous to you.
Even in
I
a
know it may
submitted
sound
community,
ridiculous
you're
to
not
you.
going to do that. It's
I
going
know, no,
it'll be a scandal.
Hassan,
no. Why would it
Hassan,
be a scandal
Brother
when these are
Hassan,
God's commands? Why would it be a
for
scandal?
the believers, they would definitely allow God's commands to prevail over them for committing any offense. But just like Elham said, if they reject it, then that is left to them between them and their Creator. He knows how to
Yeah.
punish them. Yes.
the thing is, if they were a believer to that sort of a standard, they wouldn't have, you wouldn't have find them in bed with each other.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. People make mistakes. People act stupid, and then God eventually exposes them. We don't know. You know what I mean? Being caught in this situation may show them that, dang, God is earning everything. He exposed us, and they may repent and reform. You know what I mean? For example, like the hypocrites. There were three hypocrites who stayed behind the fighting. God said, we made the earth so straightened for them that they realized there was no escape. They could not escape God, and then they repented and reformed. God redeemed them. Same situation here. These two submitters, they committed. You know, they're obviously, they call themselves submitters. They're doing this horrible thing, evil behavior. They get caught, and then now they're in a situation where everybody knows. and the earth becomes frustrated for them, they may repent and reform.
Are these two okay, hang on. Are these two single submitters?
Single, married, doesn't matter. If
If
singles
they're
committed,
single, they might be having
it's
mutual
still okay.
attraction, and they might get
They
married.
should get married. They should not be having sex.
They should go to
Exactly.
yeah.
They've already consummated the marriage.
No,
Because
no,
this is where
they're not married.
No, they are
if
not
they have
marriage is
married.
sex
the
together, they've
divine
consummated the marriage.
No,
And
they are
that
not
what I
married
want to
yet.
get back to is
you're telling me. So
you're
They are
okay,
not
if there's
married
two
yet.
people,
yes, they
if
are. Yes, they are.
so they
What
gave the
defines
dowry.
marriage?
They gave the dowry. They took a solemn oath in front of God.
What
They
defines
gave the dowry.
marriage? Where does
Yes.
it say they took a solemn oath? Maybe they took
So
it with each other.
God's
It doesn't
messenger
say there
talks
have to
about,
be.
first of all,
It
when
doesn't
you
say there
marry
have to be
somebody,
any
you have to give them the
witnesses.
due dowry. You have to give
Hang
them
on.
the due dowry.
Hang on a
And
second.
secret relationships.
Would you listen to me for a minute?
Go
In the
ahead.
Quran, how is a marriage done? In the Quran, how is it done?
Sexual attraction and dowry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how is the dowry decided? Between who?
Between the
bride
man and woman, or between the parents of the
Between the
bride?
man and the woman. It doesn't say anything about parents. It's between the
No,
man
I
and the
never said
woman. It's
anything
a
about
contract.
Don't say it never says anything about the parents. We have seen Moses did a negotiation for his daughter with Moses.
No,
right?
no. The father asked him to marry the daughter.
Yes, and then who decided Moses should go to the farm? It was the
And
father.
then he said, "Your payment shall be that you work for me for 8 years." That was the
Of
dowry.
course. Yeah,
no
so he
money,
worked
so
for the
father,
father.
that was the dowry.
So he worked for the father. That was the dowry.
Yeah, because the daughter
That's how he paid
said
off his dowry.
That was the dowry. The father negotiated for his daughter.
So that's all it
Exactly.
was. There is no ceremony.
So
There's nothing.
No,
There's have to
we're
be
not
a
talking.
ceremony.
Hey, Jerry, we're not talking about ceremony. You asked the question, what was the basis for any marriage? And we told you the dowry, mutual attraction, and the dowry that is required.
Right, but the dowry doesn't have to be with the parents. It can be two people.
Whether it is with the parent or not, there is a dowry, and a woman cannot
and
consummate.
it could be anything. It could be $100.
Whatever it is, that is not the issue. That is not the issue, brother. That is not the
lovers
issue.
are also condemned in the Quran. God does not want secret lovers.
Yes, that is
So
not
you
even
can't
the
have
issue.
secret marriage. This
have
goes against the concept of marriage.
So, but for a man and a woman to be married, there must be a dowry. That is the point we're trying to clarify here.
That's the only thing.
So for this young girl and a young man caught, having a sexual relationship, they are not married, and so they have to be punished also.
Brother Abraham, I have a question to you now. Let's say you caught them, okay, and they're righteous and they want to accept the punishment.
They should be punished. Yeah, they should be punished.
Okay, no. I'm asking. The question is that how do you punish it? First of all, you caught them, so that's and as a judge of that household, that you could make the judgment. You say 80 lashes. Where do you punish that? You take them outside to do in the community that this is not the law of the land. It's in your household.
Brother, Elham has made a clear point. Whether there's a law of the land or not, as long as you are submitters and you want to observe God, God has given you a command that is a sacred duty upon you, that you must have to observe.
My
So
question.
let's say, brother, I'm coming to your question. I'm answering your question. So you must have to accept God's judgment on you, whether you are the judge or not. What God says, let there be witnesses from the believers. Believers shall witness the punishment. So whether you are the one to be the judge or somebody else, as long as they are believers and witnesses are there and the punishment is carried out, you have fulfilled all righteousness. That is what God has said.
Fantastically put, brother. That's exactly what the verse says. The question of where is really irrelevant. It just simply says to carry out the punishment, do not be swayed from pity from carrying out God's law, and let a group of believers witness their penalty. That's it.
Exactly.
That part of it is the okay. Go the issue is the punishment where you're going to be doing that. If the law, you're going to be in prison. I'm just putting it into practicality. I just want to see the way you're seeing that.
Why would
You
you be put in prison?
have
No, I want to tell you, this also. If you are not committing a crime against the system, the system will not punish you. You are
Yes.
simply carrying out a command, and if the law of the land comes to see you carry out such laws, all they want to know is there any problem here? You just tell them there's no problem. They will leave you.
my
Yes.
my understanding is in the history of the world, the only two or three, I think, situation that the law of the land was righteous was during the Muhammad first few years.
No. The
The
Quran is
Suleiman,
still applicable here till tomorrow. The Quran
Let's
is
put a little
condemned.
let's put a
Yeah.
little perspective on this. You know what
Yeah.
would they currently do in Iran today? What do they currently do?
well, that's not a righteous country
Well,
to.
still, they in the punishment. What is it? They bury her halfway and then they stone her to death, right?
Yes.
That's that's against God's commandments.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Of
Yeah,
course
it
it
So
is.
is
what's the point of the
absolutely.
comment, though? I don't.
The
So
point of
What
the
what's
does
the
that have to
comment
point?
say?
is that
Mm.
you're trying to determine if somebody's committed adultery or not.
Okay.
It's very difficult.
Yes,
Well,
God
it
set the
might not be
parameters for
difficult. It
witnesses.
might not be difficult
Like I
if you
said,
are
if in a
caught.
tribe, when you let's say
Even if
you were a bunch of American Indians, right, and you all got your teepees, and you got 50 teepees sitting out in a big plain, and one of the guys sneaks out of his teepee and goes over to another teepee and has sex with a woman there, and it's everybody heard it, everybody sees it, and they're like, oh, they committed adultery, and then they punish them, right?
Brother Jay, I'm
That's
going to.
not going to happen today. That's
Yeah.
not going to happen today. You could go down to the country club just down the street here any Friday or Saturday night, and you could catch everybody in there committing adultery.
Let's look at God's intention. Forget about whether we can or we cannot.
absolutely, brother.
God,
Absolutely, brother Hassan. Yes.
we have said uh, from Quran, we realize God is making it difficult not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So to a point that it asks you to have 4 witnesses. So why would we go out of our way to make that possible on a family member, for example? Let me finish the question. That even would cause you to be jailed because of doing that. So, I mean, if God himself is putting hurdles along the way not to do that, why would we want to even go further to make sure that is done? That's the part I do not understand. Looking at it from God's intention. So you caught the daughter, and the daughter is also a righteous person. After thinking about it, this was a mistake. They want to be punished. You take them outside with the witnesses, one of them reports you, you're in jail. I mean, you actually going as far as to making sure that punishment is implemented when God himself is putting hurdles along the way so you don't do that. So I don't see the logic in that, whether the logic actually aligns with God's logic. I think the intention of those verses is just to put the fear of God into people's heart that
No,
this
this is not right.
bad. I mean, occasionally may happen, but this is as bad a situation that God hates. Therefore, the punishment is as bad as 80 to 100, I don't remember, 80 or 100 lashes. So it's just to getting the message, getting that message, not necessarily becoming a reason to do that. That's my take is from the verses. Otherwise, the world is never in a situation righteous enough that you clearly can place that law as the law of the land, so you won't be in prison. I mean, there are
No,
satanic
if
laws that
every if every
satanic laws are being implemented by cutting off women's. I saw a video of some in Afghanistan or Pakistan. The brother had cut the sister's head and walking in the street and not having the fear of God that he thought he's doing the righteous thing. And that country allows that, obviously. I mean, as bad as that it was. So you see that happening. But as far as God's community, as a large community that this has become. So you elect your officials. If this small community does not have enough righteous person to elect one, the righteous officials to go up there, then this community doesn't deserve that. And we live as single submitters within those communities, then that at the moment, this part of the Quran's God law we cannot implement. In the perfect world of Islamic law, we could have, but we can't.
Brother Hassan, let me tell you something. If we are submitters and we trust God and we try to put every command into practice, I want to tell you we can rule the world because God will always support us. If we can stand on our feet and say we must carry out God's command, and we are doing it, even in the society like Iran that may want to stone somebody to death. If we are a group of submitters and somebody, committed an offense and we want to use God's law, I want to tell you, if we stand on our feet to carry out God's commandments, it's a gradual process. We may face challenges, but if we insist on carrying out God's commandments, we will prevail
Uh,
eventually. It may
uh,
take a long time, but we will prevail. And this is how
Guys,
God's commandments, prevail or dominate all others,
I've
guys,
been a
religions.
submitter since
I got a
1989, and I've
question,
never
guys.
heard of anybody carrying out this thing.
Guys, I got a question.
well, has anybody been caught in this situation?
Exactly my point. Nobody's been caught, right?
Okay,
Because
but the laws
nobody's
are
trying
there,
to
and
catch
God is
anybody, and we
very clear about
shouldn't.
the laws. Though
I think
God states the
the
laws clearly.
summary of what I'm trying to say is I think we're spending way too much time on this. This is the kind of topic that is like destined for like severe internal meditation by everyone
Mm.
and asking God to help figure out what the right answer is. Because we can't even agree on the definition of marriage. We can't even agree on the definition of adultery.
Yeah, but
Well, Brother
this is
Jerry,
one
that's
way.
why we are
But
here.
this is one way we are discussing it. This is one way we have to discuss it.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
we've spent too
this
much
is,
time on it.
it's not too much. It's a very
It's not.
important piece
Yeah.
of
See,
information
what
of
you
God that decreed it on us. So actually now is the best time because we have a lot of submitters online
go
and this
back.
has been questioned as being going around in smaller circles. And now we have it so we get a broad understanding of what
Mm-hmm.
is adultery. So far from what I have understood,
Mm.
um, is that the single or married makes no difference. If you have
Oh,
a sexual relationship with anybody
Mm-hmm.
that is not your wife or rightfully yours, then you are committing adultery. Second
Absolutely.
is like um, comes back to how many lashes. You have to have a witness as well. Don't forget. I think that you have to have witnesses. But imagine some boy and a girl, they are, they commit sexual action. So what happens to them? What do we, if they come and tell us, I did it, then we say, okay, you confess that you did it. But can they say, I'm sorry, not to us, but to the other woman and to God? I apologize. Please, God, forgive me. I promise not to do it anymore. Blah, blah, and all that thing. Then the person, I don't think he has to get 70 lashes. But if they're caught, I don't
No,
know, because when you look at
no,
it,
sister. No,
uh,
sister. Anybody caught, whether you come by yourself to say you have done that or you are being caught. If God says, do not be swayed by pity, please carry out God's
I see.
commandment so that next time they would not repeat it.
I see.
They can apologize after taking their symbolic lashes.
I
They can
see.
repent.
Brother
Yes, they
Abraham,
can repent.
Brother Abraham, can I have just 20 seconds?
Yes, please, brother.
Okay. I was gonna say that I see what Hassan, Brother Hassan is saying. He says that we live in a society or community or a country that
Mm,
we are not in a position to apply God's law in this society without agreement of the victim, or whether it's adultery or uh, stealing or thieves or robbery or anything. So
mm,
the point is at that time actually the society was running by submitters at the time of
mm,
Prophet Muhammad. So the
mm.
question is, forget about the adultery and lashes. How do you want to come up with thief 538? How do you want to apply this one? You want to just uh, punish the thief that they did without, announcing the police department? Is that what you're saying? Without going to legally going to court or anywhere? I mean, we know that's not possible. If you want to discuss on this, it's going to go to the end of the day, or maybe it continues. Let's do every individual to make the decision. Okay, as a submitter, you believe that you have to do it, just do it. If you find someone did the adultery or do the adultery, just do it. Just do the lashes without any fear of legal institutions. Just go ahead and do it. That's obviously what Hassan wants to say. We have
Yeah,
many different. Many, how
mm.
about the inheritance law? How do you want to apply?
We understand Hassan's position. What we are trying to say is
I don't think
sometimes.
you understood. I'm sorry, brother. Let me put it in a way that you may. Um, okay. What are you look at the relation between moon, the sun, everything else in universe, they are applying God's law. The best way, it's like they have their own Quran and their lives are dictated by their rules, and they are applying those rules to the smallest part, and the life they get, everything goes smoothly, and that causes us to even create a situation humanity exists. Now it comes to humans and gens, that the only group that have a choice. God has given this rule book to us that knows at the same time it's impossible for this society as a whole, as a community, to be the righteous people that they would take God's law and apply it. So it's a rule book that individually we have like a ruler to judge our works by that. So I can influence, I can control my own life to a point that they live as best as life, as a righteous life according to the book. When it comes to community, things change. That's why God also says, you will make mistakes, you will break the law, you will commit sins, and I accept your apologizing for it. I accept your tawbah. I accept. So this is a situation, not that the society has to work with you as a righteous society in order for this book to be completely be applied to it. It's
Okay,
not
brother Hassan. Brother
the
Hassan.
book
Brother
as
Hassan.
a
Brother
society
Hassan.
would be. Yes.
Brother Hassan. Maybe one of the two things must happen. One, if it is impossible for the submitters to carry out God's commands, and the system, they have to go with the system, a different law under a different constitution of the that country, then they have done their best or their part by trying to carry out God's commands, and the system, stops them from doing it or says they cannot do it. Then we can now maybe apply Surah 4, verse 59, where it says, you refer it to God and His messenger or those who are in charge. Those who are in charge could be the system where you live. Then maybe the law of the land may suffice over what you want to carry out. On the other hand, we may try to want to, apply the law of the Quran, maybe to see if the society would give us, because, in every society, every organization must register under the law of the land, and then it will, submit their aims and objectives, right? That the land will authorize for this uh, uh, communities or societies or NGOs to, be able to function well. Um, if you are given this and then you want to observe God's laws, they may allow you to do it. But if you don't even try to carry out God's commands, and then you always think that the law of the land will stop you, then it is possible that you may not, you would only be calling yourself a believer, trying to observe other commandments, but some of the commandments you may not be able to observe them if you keep saying the law of the land will stop you. You did not even try to do it to see if the land would, the law of the land would allow you or not. So
Okay.
what we are saying is, let us try to implement these laws of God in the Quran in accordance with our, practices, and let's see if the law of the land would say no to what we want to practice. That's what we are trying to say.
When I say this book is the book of rules to create a system of righteous system for humans and gens. For this book, for the anything in universe is different. Doesn't have punishment because they're not objecting to it. They apply everything that God says, and they would do it. When it comes to human and gens, it applies also the result if you don't do it. Now you look at all the countries around the world.
Mm,
Those who do not claim that they are even Muslim or carry God's law or
mm,
just, and you look at, you just search on Google the happiest countries, the most democratic countries, and see what it comes. I mean, this book talks about not just this one subject. It talks about a whole lot of things that is, the rules are more important than this part. But let's start with a bigger picture, what it creates a nicer, happier, more
um,
democratic
Hassan,
society. You
brother Hassan,
find
brother
countries
Hassan,
they
let me give you an instance. Let me give you an instance with Nigeria.
haven't.
Let,
Let me just finish one more minute. Those
okay.
countries happen to be all of them falling into those Scandinavian countries. They're the
Mm,
happiest place to live. They are the most democratic countries to live as well. And because they are unconsciously applying God's law, even though they don't declare that they're Muslims. So, but when it comes to such thing as sexuality, they are not carrying these commandments. They're carrying the most important commandment. So,
okay. Let,
Excuse
let
me,
me give you
brothers
an
and
instance.
sisters.
Let me give you
Brother,
an instance with Nigeria, please.
Brother
You
Ibrahim,
see, in
Brother
Nigeria,
Ibrahim,
sorry,
Brother
just a
Ibrahim.
minute, sister.
No, no, no.
Just a
Wait a
minute.
minute. I just want to
Just a
say
minute,
something
please.
to you.
Just a
Okay, go
minute.
ahead.
Just a
Whatever.
minute, please.
Go ahead. Go
Sorry.
ahead. No problem.
Brother Hassan, you see, in Nigeria, we
Nigeria.
have two, we have two laws that is being carried out in certain situations. The Muslims say they have their own Sharia laws. Sometimes, let me tell you, even though the government has its own laws, but when it comes to certain issues concerning the Muslims, the Sharia law is what is being implemented on the guilty person, the person who committed an offense. So this is the scenario I was looking into. Imagine submitters are here in Nigeria. We have registered with the government, and they have our aims and objective. And one of us, or two of us, or some group of us, the submitters, committed an offense, and we say we want to carry out God's commands by the Quran. I tell you this: we will be able to achieve this.
Marshall, you actually
Yeah.
answer yourself. You actually answer yourself. You know, the
Mm,
Sharia law is being applied because majority of population,
mm,
in an unrighteous way, they think, and they have the representatives that they make sure even if it's not a law, it doesn't apply to them. We are not that many. This is not a righteous world to live in. I live in the state of Ohio, and I don't know anyone close to me. So are you guys. We are not of community that can affect on the laws that much, but individual laws we can live by. And so did look at those countries I mentioned. Individually, they live righteous. So and they respect laws, and so and they have representatives that they have the same common goals that they have elected, and they set up laws like that. So we cannot come into the laws such as this, that God Himself have put difficulties for you to implement it. It's just, and then leave a whole lot of other laws that regards to individual people. I mean, we have so much room for growth and for places that this, if you cannot implement it, I mean, the system won't allow it. I just don't see how. I think about how am I going to be able to do this,
Yes, you
but
can.
I'm
Yes, you
very
can.
out of
Yes,
it.
you can.
Brother,
Yes, you can.
you are just limiting yourself to your place of abode. You are just, because you are alone, you are single, you are not much. This is why you are limiting this to this your your environment. But I'm telling you, by the time you become multiplied and you want to carry out God's system, you would start, going for this application, and you will succeed if you try it. MashaAllah.
So let's have some other people make some comments. I just want to say something. Like in democratic countries, if all parties involved are consenting, there will be no problem. You know, as long as there's no physical abuse and things like this, and the symbolic lashings are not physical abuse; it's just social pressure. So in any country, even a democratic country, if you have a community of believers, and then some of the believers in there somehow, some way, finally get caught, and there's four witnesses, and they consent, and they say, okay, we've been caught, we understand God's laws, we committed wrong, and we want to follow through with what God's commandments are, because we got caught. If everybody involved is consenting, nobody will go to jail. Nobody will go to jail. There's nothing wrong here. It can be implemented, but you're right. And generally speaking, in countries where they're not submitters and they're not implementing God's laws, for the people who obviously aren't submitters, then they're not gonna. You can't catch two non-submitters and then say, "Hey, God's laws." You can tell them that, but you can't force them to do it because the law of the land will not allow that, right? Those are the
Absolutely.
scenarios. But we're talking specifically about a community. We're talking specifically about a community of submitters where submitters get caught and they wish to carry out God's laws, and everyone involved is consenting. Even if the law of the land doesn't have that punishment within your community, you can implement that.
Inshallah. Praise God.
And I encourage it, honestly. I do.
Yes, I
Thank
do.
you, Brother Ilham. God bless you for all your wonderful comments. So basically, like you just said, we can have a community, small community that everybody agrees. until inshallah one day our communities become bigger and bigger. My take on all of these things is I have still the question: should there be 4 witnesses, whether you're married or not married, for adultery or for the 100 lashes, or else? Because I know there are 4 witnesses for the woman in 4 different time. That is already set, she's behaving as a prostitute. But for the others, what happens? Say, for example, there is a single man and a single woman, right? And they have sexual relationship, and then they come and say, "Oh, do we need 4 witnesses for them too?"
Yes.
Okay, so we need 4 witnesses for single or married
Yes.
to
Yeah,
be
I'll
to
give you an
agree.
Hey,
Okay, I
family,
got you.
can I,
I
excuse me,
got it.
can I
I
say
got it.
something? Hello?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
please go
go
ahead,
Salam
ahead,
brother.
brother.
alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Actually, I have an example that I shared with Rashad. I want to tell you guys what he told me.
No, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
I,
This is hadith. Unless you have a recording or something like this, if this is just your
thank
personal
you.
account, Cameron, I'm
No,
so
no, no.
sorry. This is hadith.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right.
Allow
I
him
just
to
want to
express
say this
what.
is hadith, though. This is
Excuse
this
me.
is
No,
No,
it
no,
may
no.
literally
not
I just
be.
hadith.
want to.
It may not
Okay,
be
let's say
hadith.
I
It
shared
may
this with
not be.
Navid.
Mhm.
let the brother talk. Let him say what he
If
got to
this
say.
is sure, go ahead. Say
Good.
what you're gonna say. But if it's a personal account, this is literally hadith. I'm
Let
sorry.
Yeah, this is a personal account.
him
Yes, then
say
this
what
is
he got.
hadith.
No, it's hadith saying anything that the messenger said other than the Quran. So let the
Right.
brother
So
say
I'm
what
gonna.
he said. If he's gonna say it, let him say it. If
He
he
can
said
say
this,
it,
It
but
may
it's
not
on.
even be hadith
He,
because the messenger would have to use the
excuse me,
Quran to give him the best understanding.
let him say what he got to say, and then we can decide whether or not
okay.
he's right or wrong.
Sure.
Don't do
Say what
that.
you're gonna say, and then we'll talk about whether or not it's hadith. But it is hadith. Personal accounts are hadith. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Okay. So basically, I met my ex-wife in Los Angeles, and I told her I want to go to Tucson so we can get married. And she said, "Well, we've been having consensual relationship for almost over a year. So how are you going to tell that?" I said, "Well, we give it a shot. I mean, I'm not going to tell him that we had relationship. We're just going to ask him to make us." I didn't know what the rules were. I said, "I'm going to ask Rashad to read a verse from Quran and make us getting husband and wife." We traveled. It was a Friday. We attended the Friday prayer. After the prayer, we went to his office and he said, "This is the situation. We've been living together for, like, let's say, over a year. And what is the atonement?" And he said, uh, "Well, what did you guys didn't get married before you come here?" I said, "Well, we want to do it the Islamic way." He said, "No, you go to the city hall, and if you haven't done it, I'm a registered chaplain. We can go on Monday to City Hall in Tucson and I make you guys get married." And then he asked me whether I give her the dowry. I said, "No, we just decided 2 days ago to get married." And then he said, "So, okay, we talk about the dowry later. You want to stay till Monday?" I said, "No, we have a ticket to go back to LA on Sunday night." He said, "Okay, this is the first thing you do. You go to the city hall. The first thing you when you arrive, and you go to the city hall and get married." And then we said, I said, "I have a problem." He said, "What is it?" I said, "Because she left her husband about 2 years ago, and she hasn't get divorced yet." And he said, "Okay, that's 2 years." I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, when you go put ad in the paper, but instead of California, you should put ad in the paper 3 times within 30 days. If he doesn't respond, therefore you automatically get divorced by law." And then I said, "Well, the husband lives in Minneapolis." And then he said, "It doesn't matter. You go put the ad in the paper, follow the rules of the state of California, and he has to respond. If he doesn't, then automatically you get divorced." So the question that was left was the atonement. And then he said, well, God knew your intentions, and thankfully you are getting married. But what is the dowry? Now I can ask. I said I gave her one of those golden cover Quran that you printed. He said, no, it's supposed to be at least for 90 days, for example, that you can survive on. So you do the math and then make sure you give it to her. I said, okay, thank you. And then I said, can we have a verse from Quran that you can make us married? I said, there's no verse in Quran for marriage. But as I said, you go to the city hall and do it by the state of California, do it illegal. So that's what we did. And we did the ad in the paper, and there was no witnesses for a year and a half. He didn't go through all the stuff that you guys are discussing. That's it.
Yeah, so I have a couple of comments. This is all hadith. There's no way to verify this. This is the personal account. So now I'm going to explain exactly why this is hadith. So we all heard Cameron share a personal account. Now, what do we do with this information? I go tell another submitter. I heard from Cameron, who heard from the messenger. And then now somebody else who never met Cameron heard the story from me, and then they go say,
No,
I heard
you
Elham,
don't
who heard from
listen.
Cameron,
I
who heard
didn't
from
want to
Rashad.
listen. I didn't want to rain on your
This is
parade.
hadith.
I just want to tell you my own account. You guys are
Cameron, for your own
ridiculous.
soul, for your own soul, I strongly encourage you not to do this, because this is what's going to happen, Cameron.
No, this
This is
is
what's going to happen,
according to
Cameron.
Quran.
The people here are going to hear your account, okay? And then some of them may decide to go share this with somebody else. What are they going to say? I heard from Cameron, who heard from the messenger. And then
Yeah,
this
we
person
You
that
don't
understand
shared
your
have
that
to
with
point.
say
I
it.
heard from
We
this person.
You
understand
don't
your
have
point.
to say it.
Yeah.
No, some people would say it definitely, but they would not say it because we are being careful not to go with personal
Yes.
opinion, inshallah.
Yes. But
Um,
so what I'm saying is, even for me as a submitter, to me this is I cannot accept it. I have no way to
Yeah,
verify what he's saying.
he's not saying anybody should accept it.
No, I
That's
understand.
not
yeah,
what
I'm
he's
just letting
saying.
people
Yeah.
know that
Mm.
whatever he's sharing is literally his personal account and should not be taken as
Exactly.
any mean
Exactly.
of guidance or religious
No, no, no,
law
no.
or any type
He
of.
didn't
It
even.
has no
Yeah.
bearing. It has
He
no
didn't
weight.
even say
Essentially,
that.
what I'm
He
saying.
didn't even say that. Exactly.
I know. Again, I want to share this with others because in the past, and
No,
even
it's very
sometimes with
important.
discussions.
What you're doing is correct. It's accurate.
Yes. Yes. So,
uh,
brother, thank you, brother. So I just want to
Thank you.
finish my train of thought here.
Denis,
MashaAllah.
The reason I say this, right? The reason I say this is because in the past there have been many instances where, on certain topics, whether it's adultery or circumcision or this or
Mm.
that, people
Yeah.
have. They said, oh well, I talked to some contemporaries and they said this was their experience with Rashad. So
Mm.
people do this. People do this, whether you want them to or not. The fact is, people do this. So
Mm-hmm.
us as submitters, we want to make sure that we are not contributing in any way, shape, or form
Inshallah.
to something that's wrong.
Inshallah.
So
Inshallah.
yeah, this is not. I've told many contemporaries this, and I
It's a
said,
good
listen, everything you
reminder.
shared with me,
Yeah.
and I've told them
It's a good
everything you've just
reminder.
shared with me, I cannot accept, and they get
Brother
upset.
Elham,
Do you think I'm
God
lying? Yes.
bless you. God
It's
bless
a
you.
good
You are,
reminder. It's a good
mashallah,
reminder.
very detail oriented. And
MashaAllah.
yeah, and you what you say happens. It happened many times before. So we learn not to go about saying things like that. That is absolutely a personal statement, right? Because then, as you said, for somebody who's listening, they're going to conclude this is the way. They just say, okay, he said it to Kamran, then it's okay for me too. So it doesn't way. And then so I don't want to get in the details of that story, but the details of that story somehow it does it jumps on one thing and then goes to she needs money for a year to live on without even actually putting explaining what is the dowry. So I wouldn't repeat this to anyone, and I think it's just a personal matter between Kamran, his wife, and Rashad
may
that
I,
we cannot verify. Thank you.
What happened during the time of the previous messengers?
I don't know.
When the contemporaries actually live at the time, because Quran has a verse about this. So I'm gonna share it with you. God in 2:143 says, "We thus made you an impartial community that you may serve as a witness among the people, as the messengers serve as a witness among you."
Well, you
You
have
go
no
with the
way.
audio tape. What?
Brother Cameron, there is no way that you can explain, and as anybody would have to believe what you say. You see,
I'm
you
not.
you
I
don't
didn't
have
ask you
any
guys to believe.
evidence. You
No,
don't have any
listen.
evidence. You just sharing a story.
I just read you the verse.
I forget about the verse. I'm not discussing the
Forget the
verse.
verse.
No.
You
You
said
don't get
forget the
it.
verse.
No, I'm not saying forget the verse. I'm telling you, you are here keep sharing a personal story, nothing from the Quran, a
No, I didn't.
personal
I'm not
story.
trying to debate that. I just want to see what happened during the previous messengers and the prophets.
How do we know? We don't
So
know.
What
God has
relevance? What relevance is
verse in
this?
it.
Brother,
No,
What is your conclusion here? What is your conclusion, Cameron?
may I just jump in? There is
can we have him
No,
answer the
the
question
verse
first?
God is talking about. God is talking about contemporary people living at the time of the messengers, the prophets.
Yes.
There is no audio and video.
Okay, so what? We have audios and we have videos. What that has to do with your personal account?
No, those. Listen, as much as what I said is worthless, to me, audio and videos are worthless.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all it is. That's Rashad's opinion about things, and I respect what he said.
Okay, I don't think
If you
Rashad's
do,
videos and audios are to be overlooked.
you
They're
guys are
very
not
important
Quran studying.
information
You do audio
shared by.
video study.
okay.
Okay,
You guys are
listen.
doing audio and video study.
No, we are not.
Because
Well,
I just read you the verse, and you just
Which
say I
verse?
don't care what the verse says.
I
what is
didn't
your
say I
What
don't
conclusion
care
from
verse?
this
what
Yeah,
the
what
verse
verse
verse did
say.
you
that
read?
we
What
should
verse
accept
did
No,
you
I'm
you
read?
as
Which
a
just
verse are
witness?
you
asking
talking
in the
about?
tell me
Guys,
that
Do you
the
have
time of
a
the history
verse that says you can a
during the
personal
time of
account
the history of the
with
prophets and
your
messengers, there was no audio and video.
okay.
The invention of the audio and video has been done by you guys. Rashad never
Okay.
said go refer to my audio number from minute whatever because I said
So,
it
so,
already.
so
Okay,
Rashad told us
brother
to
Kamran,
listen to you
you
as a
are
witness. Is what you're
confusing too
saying,
many things.
Cameron?
You
okay.
Are you
going
saying that we should
jumping
accept
from
you as a
one thing
witness?
to the other.
I don't understand why you guys are being so aggressive towards
Exactly. Yeah.
Cameron.
Okay,
Marshall,
it's
Oh,
not being aggressive, brother.
Yes, you
I'm being
It's
aggressive.
are.
about
you are.
okay.
He
So
just told
I'm
his
not.
story. He just told a story about what actually
No.
happened to him, and I think
That's
you can
all.
back up everything he said with the Quran.
Mashallah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
No, I don't
Exactly.
think so. I
Okay.
don't think
Yeah,
so.
just
There is no
you
way
can
we
adjust
can
the
back
dowry,
up.
however you
Well,
can
you
adjust
can.
the dowry can be adjusted however you want. There's nothing in the
Uh-huh.
Quran that says you
Exactly.
have to do specific things about marriage. It's
Exactly.
a stupid. It's mutual consent,
Thank you.
mutual attraction. You
Exactly.
guys are like going. I just don't understand
Okay.
this.
So
Okay,
Thank
because
you.
you yourself,
we
brother
have the
Jerry,
hadith. We have
have
the
many
hadith of
times come
Cameron.
and
There's
shared
no hadith
your
here. There's no
Whatever.
hadith
relationship
here
with
This
at
is
Rasha.
Whatever.
all.
I'm out of here.
this is hadith,
Okay?
man. I'm really sorry. This is
Okay.
hadith.
It is hadith. And it is not
It's
maybe
not
Cameron
It's
doesn't
not hadith.
understand.
Look at the
You
Quran.
already gave your
What's
opinion.
happening?
Allow somebody else to speak.
Okay.
Okay, you already gave your opinion. Let's somebody else to speak.
Okay.
Mike, do you have
Other,
any
And
evidence on this?
What was the
brother
verse
Have you
that
guys
Cameron
do you have
said?
any evidence on this?
brother Elham,
What
I
was the verse that
100%
Cameron
agree
said? I
with
missed
you
that.
because in the beginning you said this is a hadith. We don't have a witness. Please do not share. You repeated that 3 times, but he chose to share it anyway. That by itself, that is
It's not
something that I don't
hadith.
understand.
this is
We
your
are
opinion.
living beings. He can tell a story.
Okay.
This is how hadith get created.
If you take it as hadith, that's your problem.
Exactly. Yes. So stop with these acts and let's listen to the question. So the brother brought a point in here that a lot of us deal with. So somebody that became a submitter before that was not a submitter, had relationship, boyfriend, girlfriends. So let's talk about a situation like that. How do you? I mean, the brother just talked about a situation that a lot of us may have been, or I myself was in that situation. So I am interested to know about that. No, I remember I had listened audio. I believe it was in one of the Quran studies of Rashad. Somebody asked him about that. A very short statement that, if I remember correctly, that he said the intention is important. And from the brother that just talked about, at least his experience, that what he says, it came back to the intention. Uh, and intention also, the one way to secure that intention or announce it to the world is by registering as wherever it was, and as far as dealing with another issue, which the wife was married prior, it was one way that Rashad has suggested. It doesn't say, nobody accepted that as what Quran said. So you two, please do not decide for the rest of us. So you gave your opinion. Thank you very much. And brother just shared something. We continuously in this Discord, we have Shia Sunnis that they come in here with a ton of hadiths, and nobody picked up on them like what you guys just did to brother here. So let's keep it within
Great.
perspective. Thank you.
Great point, Hassan. You're right.
Yeah, so I am totally agree with Brother Ilham. Yes, so I'll take this as a hadith. Yeah. So I am not going to say anybody else this hadith. This is I take as a hadith. So this is my only conclusion. Thank you.
What part of it is a hadith? Which part was hadith?
You know, can I just mention this definition of hadith? Hadith are lies attributed to the prophet. So
Uh, mm,
it's
mm,
we can't. Are we saying? But
I don't know if I'm the only one
say that
deaf. You didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything you said. You were
Yeah,
breaking up.
oh, you
Anything
didn't?
you said, yeah.
How about how about now? How
Yeah,
yeah.
about
try it
now?
again.
Is
Yeah,
it
that's
better?
better now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, so I was saying that the definition of hadith within a condemnation point of view, from the point of view of it's we're not supposed to follow it, is that it's lies attributed to the prophet. These are religious. These are lies attributed to the prophet. So what this gentleman was saying, it may not have been a lie attributed to a messenger. It may. He just said a hadith. The issue is just that, well, for myself, I can't verify this. I trust the guy and everything, but it's just something I can't verify. So, uh, God bless him. And, I just think it can be too polarizing to take on this language.
So my opinion is that we need to go back to the Quran and figure out what all these things mean. So, what is the definition of marriage? What's the purpose of marriage? What is adultery? What is taking of a secret lover? How do you define marriage? How does somebody get married? According to the Quran.
And how do you correct it? For example, the example that this brother just gave, the girlfriend, boyfriend, they were living, they love each other, and they had a good intention, and once they found a way to atone and correct the issue, they did. And all he did was mention their own private as just for our benefit. Now, no one in here would take it as this is what Quranic situation is, because we know it comes as an experience of an individual. He's not that someone would lie. He may take certain conversation in a different way and convey that. But altogether, it gives a sense of there are ways to correct that for people who are interested to do that. And this is something a lot of us live with. So it's really at least polite to let people share and not to shun them like that.
Okay, Brother Hassan, I heard all your comments, but you have misunderstood the whole situation.
Sister,
and let me explain something to you. You just spoke about 5 minutes, and I want to answer what you just said. All right?
I really do not want to, sister, get into back and forth in regard to that.
Okay. So you can stop, and I can say myself, and you don't have to respond. Basically, the question is not here. When somebody brings you information, you have to verify it to accept it. You understand? Obviously, if they were married, they get back together. All those things sounds wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. When he came to explain about dowry, I don't have any proof. I don't have any verse in the Quran.
Okay.
So what is bringing?
Yeah, there is.
He's actually one of my best friends.
The
In
word
case you don't know.
the word
Brother Kamran is, I've known him for years, and he's one of my closest friends. So you know, closest friend. I've known him for 30 years. Okay? So I know my brother, and I know he's not lying. And I'm still saying these things in the public when we don't have, we don't have a proof, Quranic proof. What he said was totally okay with me. But when it comes to show what was the decision about the dowry between the two, I don't have a verse in the Quran for it. Do you understand? He didn't give me.
Verse 4, Surah 4, verse 24.
Okay, I don't want to go back and forth. I don't want people to just waste their time talking about this all afternoon. But that's what I'm telling you. I know Brother
Sister
Kamran
Kate, I'm
very
trying
well.
to give you the Quranic justification.
What is it?
Surah 4:24 says, at the end, it says, you commit no error by mutually agreeing to any adjustments to the dowry.
Mm-hmm.
Anything.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's a perfect verse.
Exactly.
That means, okay, that's a perfect verse that you can do whatever
it could be
you
enough
want.
money to last for 90 days. It could be enough money to last for 100 years. It could be enough money.
90 days has nothing to do with dowry. Good God.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
People get married and they say, what?
It does have. If the woman says, you know what, I think I'd like for you to give me my dowry as so that if something happens, I can at least go 90 days without any money until I can figure out something else.
Okay, let me ask you, where is the 90 days in the
There's
Quran?
no 90 days. There's no 90 days. It says
Thank you.
commit no error. It says you commit no error by mutually agreeing to any adjustments to the dowry.
Okay, but where is the 90 days?
There is no 90 days.
If that's what they chose. He's saying if they chose 90 days, they're allowed to do that.
Exactly. Something they chose.
You don't need to get upset about that part of it. You don't need to get upset about that part of it.
You just said 90 days. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm
Maybe
saying
I should repeat myself anymore. I don't think I should repeat myself anymore. I'm just saying there is no 90 days
wants to have
anywhere
90
in the
days
Quran.
worth of income. That's fine. It could be 100 days.
It's
it could be
fine with you.
120 days. It could be a year.
No. First of all,
as long as it's mutually agreed. As long as it's mutually agreed.
Because I have a question from Brother Mike. I have a question. I want to hear Brother Mike's understanding on this. Mike, what do you think about contemporaries sharing personal stories? Do you think this qualifies as hadith, or what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I actually put I actually put a screenshot in the chat. Is that hadith is actually just a there's no negative or positive connotation. The Quran calls itself the best hadith. So the issue is when some are satanic, some are divine. The Quran's divine, obviously. Well, the issue is it hadith? Yeah, everything is technically hadith if I accept the Quranic definition of it. The question is it, he says something, he's sharing his personal experience, so I go back to the Quran at the end of the day, right? That's kind of how I see it.
Right. But do you
Can you
think it's
prove that the
wise
messenger
for?
said that to him? Can you prove the messenger said? No. But at the end of the day, we don't need to prove it. We just look to the Quran at the end of the day.
There you go.
Lovely.
God bless you. Thank you so much. So the point is that the 90 days is irrelevant.
Okay,
that's what he's saying too. No,
but there is
that's what
no
Jerry's saying
verse
too.
that
Jerry was giving an example of mutually agreed upon. He was just giving an example. That's what I
exactly.
heard.
But I understand what Jerry's saying. But what we heard that was said to Kamran, again, I've known him for 30 years. And he's a wonderful man and very close friend of mine. He knows me and I know him very well. What I'm trying to say is that 90 days, it becomes something, oh yeah, Rashad said to Kamran, it could be 90 days. I guess that's a good number.
If you're taking what Kamran said as, oh, he heard the messenger say 90 days, therefore it's now 90 days, well, then that would be a problem. But
that's right.
But if you look at it in light of what we see in the Quran, if it's a mutually agreed upon the two people, it doesn't matter what was said. It's really what's agreed upon the two people. So
I wish this is so,
it all depends on how you apply the information. It's all on how you utilize the
messenger,
information.
I
That's how I
asked
see it.
him how much dowry. The messenger said 90 days. That's problematic to me. If it's not to you, so be it. God is running everything.
No. The point is not problem. The point is, at the end of the day, if you're going to take what he said, what Kamran said, and say, okay, this is now a law, well, then you've done something wrong, right? But if you look at what he said in light of the Quran, if Kamran didn't say the messenger said this to me, he just said, I went through this experience and this is what we did, we would be entertaining the thought and looking in light of the Quran and coming to conclusion. The simple fact that he said he heard the messenger said something personal, now we're getting all concerned. I don't think we really need to, because at the end of the day, we have to see what we see in the Quran, period. It only becomes a problem when we start utilizing them as a source of law.
That's what I told him. I said, give me the verse. He says it's in the Quran. I said, give me the verse. The verse for what? 90 days. This is how
mutually agreed upon. To me, I can tell you my personal thoughts when I heard that. I'm like, okay, well, what verse would apply for 90 days? I would look to the Quran. It says, okay, adjustments are mutually agreed upon. I'm like, okay, so it's not really 90 days, just that's what they chose. Okay. But the Quran says mutually agreed upon. So it could be 90, it could be 20, it could be whatever. No, but this is how we use the Quran as our source. This is how we ensure
Mashallah, that is
right?
because you've been on this path for 30 years, Brother Richard and Brother Mike. You understand it very well. I know you don't going to say 90 days. But personally, I don't like to be involved or around anything or anything said by messenger of God.
No, I understand. We can't verify it. I agree that we can't verify it, so there's really no need to. But at the same time, I'm not gonna condemn someone who had the messenger tell him something that was affecting on a choice that he made, because he's just sharing what he felt. But I am clear that that's something I don't use as a source of law. My job is to look to the Quran to see if there's any validity to it, and then I see the verse talks about mutually agreed upon, and I go, oh well, in light of mutually agreed upon, then it's not 90, it's you could whatever you agree upon amongst the two people. To me, that's utilizing the Quran as my source. That's how I see it.
Well,
so yes, I don't think we should be utilizing the messenger saying, oh, the messenger told me this, because we can't validate it. But at the same time, I know I'm not going to use that as a source of law, so I'm still going to go back to the Quran. So I'm clear on how I would utilize it.
The benefit of the submitting community.
The answer is when we are holding Quran. The answer is when we are holding.
Well, I think the Semitic community should understand that if we can't validate something, at the end of the day, whatever we hear, we go to the Quran. That's it.
There you go.
I don't think we really
show me the verse, but
if people are going to take everything the messenger said through third-party information, that's problematic on the person doing that. Why would they be doing that in the first place after what we've experienced with the Prophet Muhammad's hadith and sunnah? We already know right away if somebody says something.
Another thing that
I don't agree with it.
There is another thing I want to point out.
I don't agree with it,
but
my responsibility is to say, okay, I heard you, but I'm not going to accept that. I hear this situation. I'm going to look at what the verse says, and I look at things in light of the verse, and the verse will trump obviously whatever that person I can't validate said, right? So,
okay, Mike, listen to this one. On top of it, when I said there is no verse for it, He said, you guys are constantly doing video and audio studies and listening to Rashad's hadith. That's what he
I
told
heard the
me.
conversation. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just making. I don't see all this stuff about what he said. He said that's really not relevant. I just a little bit I
Yes.
heard. I'm just like, okay, hadith is
Yeah.
narration. It can be positive, can negative, it could be satanic, like the hadith attributed to Muhammad. It could be divine, like it is from the Quran.
Yeah.
The Quran's the best hadith. It's a neutral word. Many times when we hear the word hadith, we just automatically assume it's specifically the lies against God, when it's not necessarily the case. But when it comes to how we look at it from in light of source of law, is that secondary information? Yes, it's very obvious. We can't validate that from the messenger. We can't. That's
But
true.
the videos and
But
audios we can verify. There is a huge difference. He thought his
yeah, I understand.
information is as good as video, and he was surprised why you
At the end of the
listening to
day,
the
he's gonna. But
videos
someone
and
who was with
audios.
him. But I do acknowledge that if somebody who was with Rashad, if Rashad sent them, then they're gonna do what they're told. I get that. Can we validate that? No, that was obviously specifically for them, right?
Yes.
But at the same
Yes.
time, if someone told me something, just a hypothetical here. If somebody said the exact same information that was said, but they didn't say the messenger told them to do this, they just said what they say they talked to someone, they showed, and in light of this verse mutually agreed upon, and then said whether they did, nobody here would be getting upset.
Nobody.
We would just go to the verse and see if it's an issue or not. So my point
That's
is,
right.
as submitters, we already know that secondary information that can't be validated, we're not going to accept it. We will go and look at things in light of the Quran. That's all I'm saying. So all the other stuff is kind of secondary and isn't really necessary to fight about, because if we truly understand the what hadith and what we're supposed to do, we're going to bring it back to the Quran either way, so we don't fall into that trap.
But
That's kind of
as
how I
you
see it.
know, Mike, as you noticed, Mike, when we talked about the hadith, he turned around and said, then videos and audios, you quote them all the time. That's the hadith. That's what he said. So
Yeah, but hadith
in
just
the
means
defense of his
narration.
90 days
But hadith just
memory,
but sister,
he's saying videos and audios, or you should not listen to them either.
Look,
Which
there's
is
spectrum. I
totally
didn't hear him
off
say
the
that,
wall
by the
to
way.
me.
I didn't hear him say
I
you
did.
can't listen to that. I didn't hear that, but maybe he did.
I
I don't really care
He said,
personally.
he said,
I don't think this is
okay,
a useless
I know
conversation.
somebody cannot use God's messenger's words and then say, okay, I am giving you hadith because the messenger of God left you videos and audios. I think I said, if anybody I insulted by any reason, I apologize. I do not wish to go back and forth. Everybody's opinion I respect, whatever that is. But I like when I say something or somebody says something, we don't jump at it. Just wait till somebody finishes, then jump at them. See what reason.
At the end of the day, anything I can't validate, anything I can't verify in the Quran, I'm not supposed to accept it. So that could go for what you say.
There
That would go
you
for
go.
goes for what anybody. That goes for what anybody says.